Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. You're attending the Pennington County Planning Commission May 8th, 2023 meeting. Recommendations of the Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting, May 16th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. The 10:30 a.m. is the starting time for planning items. So if you did follow through on an item to go to the Board of Commissioners, you'd want to be there by 10:30. The Planning Commission utilizes speaker request forms, which are available in the commission chambers in the back. And you can just bring them up and give them to Jerry or myself. Roll call. Everybody's here today. Commissioner LaCroix is our liaison member today. First item on the agenda is approval of the 24-23 minutes. Have you all had a chance to read them in your agenda packet? And if you have, the chair to address a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of the April 24th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the April 24th, 2023 minutes of the Planning Commission. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the agenda. The same goes here. Have you all had a chance to go through the agenda and look at today's listings? And if you had, the chair would address a motion.
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Per our packet submission, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Jason, you're going to lead us through the consent today?
Yes, sir. Jason Fennington, Assistant Planning Director. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this planning commission on certain items from the agenda and are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make the final decision. Agenda item number 3 is conditional use permit review 10-09 for Leonard Haberstroh to review a caretaker residence in an agriculture district, and staff recommends to approve the extension of conditional use permit 10-09 with conditions. Agenda item number 4 is conditional use permit 12-15 for Carrie Fruchette O'Neill to review a vacation home rental in an agriculture district. Staff recommends the approval of extension of conditional use permit 12-15 with conditions. Agenda item number 5 is conditional use permit review 12-27 for Mike Dressler to review a vacation home rental in a suburban residential district, and staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 12-27 with conditions. Agenda item number 6 is conditional use permit review 16-23 for Harlan and Carol Huffman to review a recreational vehicle to be used as temporary living quarters during the summer months. And staff recommends to end conditional use permit 16-23 as it is no longer needed. Agenda number 7 is conditional use permit review 16-44 for Allison and Nicholas DuPont to review a vacation home rental in a suburban residential district. And staff recommends to end conditional use permit 16-44 as the new owner has obtained a new conditional use permit for vacation home rental. Agenda item number 8 is conditional use permit review 18-01 for Ron Weifenbach to review seasonal retail sales of Class C fireworks in a commercial district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 18-01 with conditions. Agenda item number 9 is conditional use permit review 19-04 for Michael and Soraya Pellin to review a vacation home rental in a suburban residential district. And staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 19-04 with conditions. Agenda item number 10 is conditional use permit review 19-22 for Michael and Soraya Pellin to review a vacation home rental in a suburban residential district. And staff recommends the approval of the extension of conditional use permit 19-22 with conditions. Agenda item number 11 is conditional use permit review 21-18 for Lowell Kolb to allow a temporary campground assembly of people on the subject property during the month of July in an agriculture district. And staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 21-18 with conditions. Agenda item number 12 is conditional use permit review 21-23 for Mark Erickson to allow a specialty resort in agriculture district. And staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 21-23 with conditions. Agenda item number 13 is conditional use permit review 21-29 for James and Janice Beld to review a recreational vehicle to be used as temporary living quarters for less than 180 days per calendar year. Staff recommends to end conditional use permit 21-29 as it is no longer needed. Agenda item number 14 is conditional use permit review 21-57 for Kevin and Deanne Killian to review 2 primitive seasonal cabins to be used as bunkhouses on the subject property for no more than 180 days per calendar year. And staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 21-57 with conditions. And lastly, agenda item number 15, minor planned unit development amendment 20-03 for Lacor LLC, Philip Lackner, to review a gunsmithing business as a home occupation on the subject property. And staff recommends approval of the extension of minor planned unit development amendment 20-03 with conditions.
Thank you, Jason. It was a long one this morning. Staff have any items they would desire to have pulled?
No, sir.
Is there any items that the commission would like to have pulled?
Number 4.
Okay,
Number 4, please.
okay. Number 4 will be pulled.
Number 3.
Okay, that was the same one I had. All right. Any others from the commission? From the audience? By that, I mean audience that we have these under the consent calendar. When we make a motion, we will be approving these in mass. They will go. We are pulling based on recommendation number 3 and number 4. If you desire to have one pulled because you're here to comment on that, either as opposed or in support of, you certainly are allowed to. Is anyone in the audience would like to have an item pulled? All right. Someone like to make a motion then for approval of the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda items 5 through 15.
Second.
That fits. That's good. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3. And I believe it's just for a question here, Kelsey.
Good morning, Kelsey Roush, Planning Department.
We don't need you to go into the whole thing, just a question we had.
Recommendations, under recommendations number 2, it says that the caretaker's residence be removed from the property once the care is no longer needed, or the property be subdivided, which I understand. This is a metal building. We're not going to remove it. Can they have the option of removing the apartment, shall we say, inside and make it a metal building? Now, obviously, they could keep a toilet. That's standard, but the
Yes.
rest of it.
Yes, so that would be an option, yes. I have a feeling that they will probably just split the lot when the time comes. I don't know the situation completely, but as of right now, his father is doing well, things are fine. He needs help, on a
Right.
regular basis, so that's why Jeff does live so close, so.
Well, I just wondered if it would be good to give them the option that when the time does come, rather than splitting up the land, so it's 30-some acres, they could remove, and I don't know what you would say, remove the,
The living quarters.
Living, okay.
Yes, yeah.
yeah, with the exception of a toilet.
Just to wade in here, Jason and Brittany thought that was an understanding in the way it's read or written. And I had questions like you. It says
Okay.
the caretaker's residence be removed from the property. And I guess you guys are assuming that means that any Eating capabilities, bedroom capabilities, those are taken out, but certainly we've allowed toilets and restrooms in storage, and this is an excellent structure, and we probably wouldn't have this under today's ordinance. This has been in place some time, so you feel comfortable with that instruction number 2?
Yes, yes. And honestly, most of the time, the caretakers' residences are single wides, double wides that can be easily taken
Right.
on and off. In this case, I'm not sure how they were allowed to build a metal building at that point. I want to say he had started building it before he got permits, but I don't know for sure. You know, I didn't look that far back, but I think in this case, he would be allowed to just remove or in the case of the main residence, depending on how livable that is, possibly turn that into storage and use this residence as the main structure when the time came. So,
I'm satisfied if you're comfortable, plus it is now on the record now that the commission was concerned. We didn't feel it was necessary for them to spend the money to subdivide the property. That seems very difficult for a citizen. However, based on the instruction, I'm satisfied. What about you, Michael?
Fine, you bet.
Would you care to make a motion to get this?
Yes, I would make a motion that we approve item agenda number 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve item number 3 on the agenda per staff's recommendation with conditions. Any discussion from the commission? From the audience? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 4.
Again, this is just a quick question. On the first condition, it said the maximum overnight occupancy be limited to 6 people and the maximum daytime occupancy be limited to 5. I've never seen that before, so can you explain why that is?
I actually did, I was confused by that as well, so I looked into it. She had made that condition herself. She did not want to be able to allow double the occupancy like our ordinance states. So she only wanted an extra 5 people, not an extra 6. Like an extra, like total 12 people. She didn't want to double her daytime occupancy. So that is all based on the property owner's request.
Okay.
It doesn't really read that way, though.
And
I mean, it looks like you can only have 5 people stay there during the day.
Yeah.
yeah. I think it should say 5 additional people is what it should say, which you could change that right now if you would like to.
All right.
Do you know for sure that's what the,
Yeah, she only wanted to allow, so the main 6 people, they could only have 5 more people come. I kind of looked back in the notes. So if people live here, they want to come visit for the day, she didn't want to allow 12 people to show up during the day.
okay, it struck me funny because if you have 6 people overnight and you can only have 5 during the day, who are you kicking out?
Right?
Any
I
other questions?
I would amend it, go ahead. No, that's the only question I had. I would,
That was a good catch, Karen. I didn't catch that one at all. I
I
had
would
to read slow.
move to approve the extension of CU 12-15 with condition number 1 amended to read, daytime occupancy be limited to 5 additional people.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item number 4, which is conditional use permit 12-15 per staff's recommendation with 15 conditions. Number 1 condition, adding the word additional to the number of people based on the 5, adding it in front of the 5. Discussion. Discussion from the audience. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 16. Before you get started, we do have a person on Zoom, Gerald Miller. Are you there?
Yep, I am.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start out on number 16. Go right ahead, Megan.
Megan Talmadge, planner. Agenda item 16 is conditional use permit 23-12 and is to allow a vacation home rental on the subject property. The applicant is Reese Chambers and their local contact is Executive Lodging of Black Hills by Casa. Their location is 12311 Whitetail Road and the lot size is 1.28 acres. Their current zoning is suburban residential district and their existing land use is residential. The access is off of Whitetail Road, and they do not have any flood hazard on the property. The zoning ordinance lists 7 criteria that the planning commission may consider in their review of conditional use permit applications. They are listed on the screen. 1, no, a vacation home rental should not be detrimental or endanger the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. 2, no, a vacation home rental is considered a residential use. This requested use should not change the residential use of the property or have any long-term negative effects on the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity. 3, no, the requested use should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of any surrounding property in the area. 4, yes, all necessary utilities are in place. 5, yes, access is off of Whitetail Road. The requested use should not significantly affect the traffic congestion. 6, yes, the property is zoned suburban residential. An approved conditional use permit is required to operate a vacation home rental in the zoning district. 7, yes, the future land use is suburban residential. Allowing this conditional use permit should be consistent with the current comprehensive plan. Currently on the property, there is a single-family residence and detached garage with a on-site wastewater treatment system that was installed at the same time as the single-family residence, and they have a current operating permit. There were no objections or major concerns during the interdepartmental review, and staff performed a site visit on May 1st and found that there were smoke detectors in each bedroom, fire extinguishers on each floor, the performance requirements were posted, and emergency information was posted. At the time of writing the staff report, staff has not received any complaints regarding this request, so staff recommends approval of conditional use permit CU 23-12.
Thank you, Megan. Questions for Megan? You cleared the cut today, Megan. No questions.
That's great.
Yeah, I figured you'd like that. All right. We do have a person on Zoom that would want to weigh in. It's your opportunity to speak right now. If you would, please introduce yourself for the record and go on from there.
I don't have anything to contribute. My husband Reese is there to make comments if needed.
All right. Anyone in the audience that's here to speak on this matter? Reese said if needed, would you like to come up or you want to stay where you're at? I can say something. Sure, go right ahead, Reese. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Reese Chambers. Thanks for all your time this morning. We submitted comments mostly in regard to previous cups that were asked for in this area. We felt that we needed to respond to some potential comments that we might receive for our property. In the last few weeks, we have met with a lot of the residents and neighbors in our area, the ones we sent letters to, and we feel we've addressed a lot of those concerns personally and will continue to do so on an ongoing basis. We want to be very communicative with our neighbors. We want them to let us know if there's anything that they see wrong in the management of our property. We need to hold our management company accountable, and having our neighbors there can help us do that. So I think we're kind of all on the same page. I won't read all these comments that we submitted because We don't have any opposing comments, but those were in preparation of that fact. So that's all I have to say.
Questions for Reese? I have one. Your local contact's really very close to the limit as far as the distance. Do you have one does that particular company, Executive Lodging in the Black Hills, have one that's somewhat close to the vacation home? Do you know?
No, I don't. When we went through this process, we looked at a lot of different companies. I interviewed probably 5 different ones, and this one seemed to be the most responsive, and I think that's the important thing.
Okay. I just know that the contact's a very important person when you're a remote owner, and so does the commission. The commission looks strongly on the ability of the local contact to take care of your problems. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that that's probably one of the key factors in any neighborhood, I'm sure, in regards to these.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Reese? Thank you, Reese. Appreciate it. Discussion or a motion from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move approval of CU 23-12.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve conditional use permit 23-12 per staff's recommendation with 15 conditions. Discussion from the commission. From the audience, anyone would like to comment on this before we act upon it? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 17.
Morning again, Commissioners. Jason Tennyson, Assistant Planning Director. Agenda item number 17 is conditional use permit 23-13. The request is to live in an existing residence while building a new single-family residence. The applicants are Neil and Terry Faust. Location of the property is 13500 Nemo Road. It is 18.09 acres, currently zoned rural residential district. Access is off Nemo Road, and there is unstudied flood hazard area on the property. The zoning ordinance lists 7 criteria the Planning Commission may consider in their review of conditional use permit applications. They're on the screen. I'll read staff's responses, starting with number 1. No, the requested use should not be detrimental or endanger the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. Number 2, the requested use should not have any long-term negative effects on the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity. Number 3, no, the requested use should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of any surrounding property in the area. Number 4, yes, the on-site wastewater treatment system is sized for 3 bedrooms. The proposed residence will have 3 bedrooms. The living quarters currently being utilized will be removed from the existing residence. Therefore, the on-site wastewater treatment system appears to be adequate. Number 5, yes, the requested use should not negatively impact traffic congestion on Nemo Road. Number 6, yes, the property is zoned rural residential district. Temporarily living in an existing residence while building a single-family residence is allowed with an approved conditional use permit. And lastly, number 7, yes, future land use of the subject property is rural residential district. Allowing this conditional use permit is consistent with the current comprehensive plan view to 2040. As the property sits today, it does contain a single-family residence that was built in 2015. A 2,900 square foot shop with living quarters that was built in 2014. The first single-family residence I referred to was a building permit that they originally applied for to build this residence that they're proposing now. That did expire. They did not end up building that residence at that time. There's also 6 by 12 barn, 48 by 36 pole barn, and a 32 by 12 addition to the pole barn, as well as an on-site wastewater treatment system. The request was sent for interdepartmental review. Emergency services stated that it doesn't appear the applicant has an adequate house number posted. I did verify during the site visit that there is addresses posted on the residence and at the driveway where it intersects Nemo Road. No other objections or concerns were received. Staff's analysis of the request is that the applicant is requesting to live in an existing residence while building a new single-family residence. Here's a picture of the shop building that he has living quarters in right now. So basically what he's done is convert this garage into living quarters. You can see there is an attached two-car garage to the west side of the property as well. And this is the foundation for the proposed residence. May 26th of 2015, the Planning Commission did approve a conditional use permit to allow this same requested use. However, the plans changed and they ended up not building it at that time. So this is the reason for the request today. The applicant did apply for a building permit to construct this residence, so that is on file with staff. If the Planning Commission approves this, then his building permit will be approved and he'll be able to construct that residence. Like I said, I did conduct a site visit. I did speak with the applicant, and he did state that once the proposed residence is habitable, that the living quarters, including the kitchen, will be removed from the shop building as it sits today. So with that, staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 23-13 with conditions.
Thank you, Jason. Questions for Jason? Jason, I just have one, and I think I understand it. Under building permits, I see a single-family residence, and that was the old one, and they are going to use that 2,900 square foot with living quarters is what we're dealing with.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jason? Anyone from the audience care to speak on this matter?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I go.
Yes, go ahead.
Was the foundation for the new residential structure poured back during the original permitting request?
I believe it was, yep.
Is there any requirement for a structural analysis of that concrete that's been exposed to the weather for this many years?
I did notice during my site visit, and even in this picture, you can see the foundation does have some cracks in it that'll need to be addressed before he finalizes construction on it, so.
Is that part of the construction inspection process?
We require that the builders, whoever he hires as a contractor, or if he's doing the work himself, meet International Residential Code requirements.
Yeah, because I know exposed concrete like that for an extended period of time can have some detrimental, it doesn't meet the original structural specifications of a foundation sometimes. So
Yep.
I have a little bit of concern about that. I'd like to verify that that would be inspected for integrity.
Okay.
Having done both ways, you can go the other way too. When it's exposed to it can get very hard, much harder than what was the original spec of the concrete. All you have to do is try to tear down one of these old service stations and put in a convenience store to find out how hard concrete can get when it just sits there exposed. So it can go both ways. I don't know whether your building codes would call for it, but they could just take a very small core example and have it tested to see. But yeah, I would go with whatever we've now established as our building code. I understand that it looks to me like the only thing that I see in jeopardy as far as the aging is the one footing carrying out, and I assume there's some probably other footings. They're going to have to clean up around it when they build anyway. So,
Right.
any other questions for Jason from the audience?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are these the original people who poured the system?
Yep, they're the original owners.
So that's been sitting there for 25 years or thereabouts?
Mhm.
Okay. I just lived down the road, on Nemo Road, for 24 years, and I'd walk by this place frequently, and
It's kind of
one always wondered if the mausoleum was ever going to be built or not. I'm glad to hear that they're going to do something, but yeah, it would seem appropriate to be alert to the possibility of some kind of decay and so forth. Anyway, okay, thank you.
Based on the permit, that's 8 years, isn't it? 15 was the number, the old number?
Yes, that's when they originally applied for the building permit
Right.
and the conditional use permit to do
Right.
the same
Okay,
request.
thank you. I thought it was, and it was approved in May of 15, it looks like. All right.
Correct.
Anything else from the commission? Anyone from the audience that want to speak on this matter? Chair to address a motion.
So move.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to approve CU 23-13 per staff's recommendation with 7 conditions. Discussion. Anyone from the audience for discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 18.
Cody Sack, I'm Road Planner. Item 18 is conditional use permit CU 23-14. It is to allow a temporary asphalt batch plant on the subject property. The applicant is Bituminous Paving. Chris Bremer is the agent. The landowner is Pete Lean and Sons. Location of the property is south of 24250 Creston Road. Currently zoned agricultural district with an existing land use of a gravel pit. Access is off Creston Road, and there is special flood hazard area on the property, the 100-year floodplain. The zoning ordinance lists the 7 criteria the planning commission may consider in the review for conditional use permit applications. Those answers are on the screen. I'll read them aloud. Number 1, no, an asphalt batch plant is temporary use and is located in an area to minimize impact to the public. Number 2, no, the asphalt batch plant is temporary and will be removed and the site reclaimed to original condition. The surrounding properties are used as agriculture, public land, and existing aggregate mining operation. Number 3, no, allowing the CUP should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of the surrounding properties in the area, as the asphalt batch plant will be removed when the project is completed. Number 4, yes, the applicants will be required to place a porta potty on the property for the employees. Number 5, yes, access is off Creston Road, and the requested use should not significantly affect traffic congestion. 6, yes, the property is zoned agriculture district. Asphalt batch plants are allowed with an approved CUP in this zoning district. And number 7, yes, the future land use is agriculture district. Allowing this conditional use permit should be consistent with the current comprehensive plan. Currently, the property is vacant. This was routed around for your department review. The highway department came back and said that an approach permit must be on file and a haul road agreement be in place with the highway department. I believe that the haul road agreement is in place with the highway department now, but it's still made a condition of approval just to verify, as well as an approach permit. And the addressing coordinator said an address will need to be posted in accordance with Pennington County Ordinance number 20. The asphalt batch plant will support the South Dakota Department of Transportation with road improvements to East Highway 44. The projected timeline of the project will be July 5th through September 15th, 2023, but may commence earlier or finish later. And the site will be reclaimed into the original condition when the asphalt batch plant is removed. Staff has not received any comments or concerns from any of the neighboring properties. So with that, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit CU 23-14 with conditions.
Thank you, Cody. Questions for Cody?
Didn't we approve a gravel pit in this area?
So this is the Pete Lean Creston Mine gravel pit.
This is the one that we did, okay, all right.
It's sitting, the location will be right in here, and you can see that it's been kind of dug out.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Under these, the way our ordinance is written allows the planning department, planning director, a certain amount of latitude in operating these, because you never know totally when they're going to start or finish and other conditions that come up that they encounter. Is that correct?
Yes. The planning commission has the ultimate say. So if something comes up where they can't start the project at a certain time, or we'll just bring it up for review, a lot of the planning commission adjust accordingly.
Okay.
But they should be done this fall, and the review would be in November. So we'll know in November.
So the project could be totally done by then?
It could be done, it could be ongoing, and then at that point, we would just continue the review for a couple more months and see where we're at that point in time.
Thank you, Cody. Any other questions for Cody?
Could we, it's kind of open-ended, and I'm wondering about having a drop-dead date for review or coming back here. So if it's temporary, should have a date that ends it or it comes back before us as a review period.
So we do have the review in 6 months. I just don't know the meeting dates for November. We can put it on the first meeting date in November. So it would be reviewed within 6 months from
Okay. Yeah.
now.
That's acceptable.
Okay.
Any other questions for Cody? Anyone else would like to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Please come up and introduce yourself just for the record and take off from there.
Thank you very much. My name is Scott Edoff, Edoff. I'm not opposed or for this project. I'm not going there. From where they have their site, which I got a letter and it has a very generic map on it. We really don't have any contacts on here for Pete Lean and Sons or Bituminous for me to call. It has a planning and zoning. But this is the first letter I heard about this going on. My father lives a half a mile south of there on section 21. As you come down Creston Road, right at the bottom of the screen, that's where my 88-year-old father lives. And I'm very concerned, you know, I've been around, I'm not a stranger to paving and I'm not a stranger to sand and gravel because I worked at that pit for 31 and a half years. I can't see any problems, you know, and I'm not here to shut them guys down by any means. What I would like is I would like a contact for Bituminous and I would like a contact for Pete Lean and Sons. So if there is issues, I have someone to call and express my concerns with, and if not met, I can come back here later and say, you know, this is what's happening. But at this point, I have I have a few concerns, basically the dust and the, you know, all that, but I can't see any problems up front as we speak. You know, if things go well, there won't be a problem. But if something would happen or something would come around, I would like to have the opportunity to come back and, you know, just say this wasn't fixed, or at least I'd like to have some contacts of who to call or who to talk to. I'd like them guys to come up and present their names to me if they would.
I agree with you. I'd even stretch it one farther. What you don't understand, though we approve these, we don't have control over the conditions in the hall agreement either.
Yes.
We approved the hall agreement, but we don't have control over the conditions the highway department does. So I would think you would also want contact added for them, because if there was conditions, you'd like to know whether they were being violated, if that was part of your problem.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Would you have problems adding that as an extra condition? Those three contacts?
Coach Sacramento Planner, I can get you the contacts. I don't have a specific name for Pete Lean. I do for Bituminous, but I could probably find you the Pete Lean one.
Okay. Well, Pete Lean has a property manager. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I'm not
I'd like that name.
Yeah, I'm not sure who specifically does the Creston mine out there. I just deal with their main person at the office here.
And you also provide them our highway department contact that would be appropriate for hall agreements?
Yep, I absolutely can.
Okay, then I wouldn't think we would need to do a condition. Would that meet what you need, Scott?
Yes, I just wanted it to be on record that I was here and did speak. If down the road I needed to come back, then they can't say, well, you never even showed up at the planning meeting.
Any questions for Scott before?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to give Scott our agenda stuff, so it's a little more information than that one little piece of paper you get.
Sure.
So that'll
And he
help you.
gets as required notice. Excellent idea, Commissioner.
And thank you very much.
Anyone else from the audience want to speak on this matter before we? Is the commission comfortable with making a motion on the matter?
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve conditional use 23-14 per staff's recommendation with 16 conditions. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 19.
Cody Sack, Environmental Planner. Item 19 is Plan Unit Development Overlay PU 23-04. It's to allow a Plan Unit Development Overlay for a specialty resort. The applicant landowner is Limestone Creek Ranch LLC, Thomas Stowers. The applicant is actually requesting to withdraw the application as he pursues other options. So staff is going to recommend to withdraw the application of Plan Unit Development Overlay PU 23-04 with the applicant's concurrence.
All right, thank you. Douglas and Carolyn Cogan, are you interested in it, or do you want to live with withdrawal? The applicant's requesting that this request be withdrawn.
Yeah, well, we were opposed to it because we live out there just up the road from it.
Would you still like to speak? You certainly may. It's up to you.
I will come up and speak.
Sure. And you're Carolyn. Please introduce yourself for the record and go from there. Thank you.
Well, I'm Carolyn Cogan. I've been out there for 3 years, and my husband bought the property in 2017. We live on the original homestead for Oak Meadows. We've got the 110-year-old barn, and we live on the 20-acre just beyond there. But originally, when this big ranch, the Cobb, or whatever it was originally, was subdivided maybe 3 or 4 decades ago, it was subdivided into approximately 3-acre lots. And many of the people at that time in the early 1990s and so forth bought maybe 3 lots, so they have up to 10 acres. And that's what this property happens to have. I think it's about 9.5 acres. And he was approved for a vacation rental a couple of years ago, along with another property in Oak Meadows. So there are 2 vacation rentals now. The rest of us are all permanent residents. Some go south for the winter and so forth. There are no children out there anymore that I'm aware of. There aren't that many properties, but part of those of us who are residents out there it's a beautiful meadow, and when the owner is not living there, garbage, the disposals, the green containers, one of them at this particular property, laid in the ditch for 2 or 3 weeks after the snow in April. There's 2 garbage cans out there now. The people checked out a couple, 3 days ago, and they apparently brought the garbage to the end of the road. And one has got the lid halfway up because it's more than full. And I took a picture of it this morning on the way out. But I'm glad to hear that he's withdrawing for now, because this is an area that I don't think any of us want to see going commercial. I don't have any idea what his plan was for a specialty resort. I think that would need to be addressed for those of us who live out there. So anyway, that's just, I'd like to go on record saying that. And I believe I would speak for most everybody out there, but of course I can't say that for sure.
Questions for Carolyn before she says them? Thank you, Carolyn.
Yes, thank you.
Chair would address a motion. Sure, go right ahead. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Ryan Horton. I have similar thoughts to who just spoke. I actually own, my wife and I own the 3 lots directly across the street. We've only lived there for 6 months, so we haven't seen the summer influx of vacation home renters, and I'm not opposed to vacation homes. My concern, though, is the density of vacation homes within the subdivision. And there are 2 primary roads in this subdivision. You have Oak Meadows Road and Oak Meadows Court. Oak Meadows Road only has 5 or 6 structures on that road. There's another one being built, and I have concerns about what that's going to end up be as I track back to the company that owns that lot, so I'm concerned about that. But basically, I live on the middle of the 3 lots full-time that we have. The house to the left of me is a vacation rental. The house across the street is a vacation rental. And the house to the right of me is a second home for somebody. So really, in the winter, I didn't really see anybody. I did see the trash can laying in the ditch for more than 2 or 3 weeks. It was a few months that I saw it laying in the ditch. and I saw trash flying out of the overflowing one across the street that's out there now. So I have concerns with the management of the property. I don't think somebody's over there enough to take care of it in the way it should be. And like I said, I'm not opposed to vacation rentals, but I think the density on this street, where you have nearly 50% of the properties being vacation rentals, is harmful to the people that live there full-time and who participate in the local community there. So happy to hear it's withdrawn. I do have concerns that they're going to try to subdivide this property and build another structure on another lot, as I overheard some things, but we'll cross that bridge when the time comes.
Questions for Ryan before he sits down? I have one. Your 3 lots, what are their sizes? Just off, I'm not going to hold you to them.
They average 3 acres each.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ryan. Anyone else then from the audience would like to speak on this item before we discuss it? Chair would address the motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve PU 23-04 per staff recommendations to withdraw the application.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve PU 23-04 overlay per staff's recommendation to withdraw the application. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're on to item number 20, which is Megan again.
Agenda item 20 is a major planned unit development amendment, 23-05, to amend an existing planned unit development to allow for a telecommunications tower. The applicant is Anco Developments, LLC. The landowner is Tom George Trust. The location is 12325 Rafter J Bar Road, and the lot size is 30.72 acres. The current zoning is planned unit development, and the existing land use is a campground. The access is off of Rafter J Bar Road via Highway 16, and there is 100-year floodplain and floodway on the property. Currently on the property, there are 14 structures and all building permits have been obtained. Their on-site wastewater treatment system is a lagoon system that was approved in 1999 by the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. There were no major comments or concerns in the interdepartmental review. The applicant is requesting to allow a telecommunication tower in the Rafter J Campground Planned Unit Development. The applicant has also applied for a variance that will be heard at the May 16, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting for the location of the tower in relation to the property lines. If you look at the screen, there is an approximate location of the tower. And the requested use will provide communications in an area that is lacking and appears to be in harmony with the current land uses and the current comprehensive plan. And so staff recommends approval of the major planned unit development amendment, PU 23-05.
Thank you, Megan. And earlier, Mike and I both discussed, this is like a first step in this process. Has nothing to do with the quality of or review the tower or anything else. We're in the very first steps so that they can approach doing a tower. And I think I want to comment, this business is a long-established business, and I'm tending to, if they believe they need this in that direction, I think it would help a lot of people out there. Any other questions for Megan or comments? Mike?
And this probably makes sense, but it doesn't to me. The Sabre Industries letter that's in here.
Yes.
It says RE proposed 195 EXT. I assume that means extension to 235-foot supporting tower. What in the world does that mean?
That's technical language, and there is an agent from the applicant here. If he would like to come up and kind of explain that
I'm just
better.
curious what it meant.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record and
Yeah,
go ahead and
my
address
name's
Mike's issue.
My name's Leland Langstrat. I'm with Anco Developments. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. It's a proposed 190-foot tower. And then if additional carriers need to come in the future, we have the option to extend it up to 235 feet.
So when we approve this, do we just approve the 195 or we approve it to, it could be 235? That's what you'll be going after.
Right. I think, just 195 for right now. I think we'd have to go through another process to get 235. I don't expect it to be needed, but we just put it in there.
To
just
help
that way
the
everybody can
applicant,
be
Mike,
aware.
we're not approving the tower right now. We're
No.
just approving their ability
Yeah.
and their request to do an amendment to allow in a tower.
Well, I was just curious with the
Yeah.
fall down and all that, you're talking a different.
Sure.
And
The
the
fall down
letter,
radius,
and
there'll
the
be a
letter
lot
is
of items.
specifically to ensure that you guys are aware that it's designed to collapse on itself due to the close proximity of lot lines, and that's why we need the variance. But the same person does own both pieces of property, so, but I think that's more of a variance meeting topic than planned
Again,
unit
to
development.
expand, the staff's going to spend a lot of time reviewing the tower submission separate from what we're doing here. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant or for Megan? Well, we've got them up here. Chair to address the motion if no one else from the audience would like to speak on this matter.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve per staff's recommendation. Major Planned Unit Development Amendment, PU 23-03 with 6 conditions. Discussion.
Isn't,
Go ahead.
it's PU 2305, isn't it?
Yeah, I read
Yes.
down at the bottom.
I did make a
You're really
mistake.
good today, Karen. You're
Staff
just
report
really
early.
grabbing these things. 2305. I'm going to redo that just for the record. The motion is to approve per staff's recommendations. Major Planned Unit Development Amendment, PU-035 with 6 conditions. Discussion.
Read that number again.
23-05.
Okay.
Thank you. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anyone want to take a break before we go on to the ordinance, or just move on? All right, we're going to go on. Item number 21. I'm going to lead this off. We need to get, just to explain so that we stay under Robert's Rules of Order under an appropriate way. We had every right to table those items of discussion last week because we had an extra item of concern, and that item of concern, we were going to lose our room at 1 o'clock. They need to come off and put back into what you call a motion to postpone, and you can postpone them to a certain date. But they need to come off so we can discuss them today, and then you guys can decide whether you want to postpone additional discussion and action on them. So we do have, let me move to that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first 2 were put on the table. Is that correct?
3. Yes.
Yes. So I'd like to get those off the table first so that we could stay on the discussion list. Is that acceptable to the commission? And Brittany told me she'd just as soon I clean this up first and get this started. So let's do that.
Mr. Chair, I move we take off the table the 3 items, I think it was 3, that we
Yes.
tabled at the
I
last
see that
meeting
now, 3.
on ordinance amendment OA 2301.
Is there a second to that motion?
Again.
It's moved and seconded to take the 3 items off, the 1 acre lot size requirement, the current requirements for parking, and let's see, the 4th one, we passed one, add.
Well, the transfer was to do research.
Yes, transfer was some research. We moved that, we actually did a motion on it. There's only two that are on the table that I see.
Okay.
All right, is that clear to the commission? The two that are on the table, and I named them 1 acre and the parking requirements.
Right.
Discussion. Discussion from the audience. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, to expand on that, it is normal when an item is pulled from the table that you speak on that item, either at the same meeting, the next meeting, or sometime within the next 90 days. And as you all can smile, that's how really professional politicians lose things. They stick it on the table and make the 90 days run out. Our U.S. Senate and legislature are great at that. Well, anyway, what I'm going to explain is I would like to go right back to item number 1, and we continue on our discussion, and we will move on to number 2 after that, since they are off the table. Is that acceptable to the commission? Thank you. We're going to go ahead on the 1 acre lot size then. Thank you. Floor is open to anyone on the commission or anybody that's out in the audience. We can go back a little bit of review. I had one idea to solve the concerns of our citizens regarding a 1 acre, and I'll reread that if you like. And that might kick off everybody's memory because everybody wasn't in agreement with it. So I'll get to it here. Basically, it was to leave the 1 acre requirement in place for the special use permit, and that any request that was less than 1 acre had to be reviewed as conditional use permit. That was my recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
forgive me for walking in after you guys have done so much work.
You bet, Lloyd.
So your suggestion was you keep it at 1 acre, and anything under would have to get a conditional use permit?
Correct. No matter what
No
the
matter what,
applicant,
you'd have
other
to-
items were, they could pass everything else. If they are less than 1 acre, it would have to be conditional. And the reason I proposed that, it stayed in order with what the original committee that you folks put together recommended. They recommended leaving the 1 acre. And it also solves the problems for, especially, there was one gentleman I remember in the public meeting that was in the Rapid Valley area, and he had a smaller than normal lot, and his neighbors were all in agreement and was in some financial stress over that and what he'd done with it. And I just thought it takes the swords out of everybody's hands on the 1 acre to do that, and leaves it in the lap of the commission to decide.
Follow up. I agree with that. I think the conditional use permit, it comes back to review, that gives the commission and planning commission and the commission to be able to take up the item separately to see if there's any special conditions that exist that may warrant it. But I think I like that compromise. I kind of hate just plain ordinances because sometimes we get stuck on those as individuals and commissioners that this says this, I'm not going to do anything else. But no, really, reality, our job is to take up each item separately. And there are always special conditions that exist, I feel. But if you can't show them, then we have the ordinance to fall back on.
One other thing I wanted to throw in, there has been excellent in our receipts through the email process. There's been excellent arguments both direction in this, leaving it at the 1 acre and reducing it from both. And some of them are operators on each side of the fence. So I just wanted to make sure that I considered those before the recommendation I'm making. I don't often try to make a recommendation like that, but go ahead, Jim.
I was just thinking about the 1 acre. People will come, for all practical purposes, looking for an exception here, and they will apply for a CUP. Is it incumbent upon us to somehow provide some idea of conditions that we would consider to be legitimate. I mean, should we have conditions established that would qualify, or, and not necessarily the only conditions, but conditions that might qualify someone to be able to apply for a CUP who had less than 1 acre, is what I'm saying.
Commissioner Roskinek proposed some.
Oh, did he?
His,
Okay, okay.
he said, he suggested that the planning commission review a certain percentage of the directly adjoining neighbors agreeing to it. And the problem I see in that is that we don't do that with other things.
Yeah.
We're now selecting and adding a rule that doesn't seem to me fit within good planning and zoning.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I'm not, and when I say this casually because I have not really tried to think through what those conditions might be, with some reference to a financial situation in which an unusual legal or financial circumstance prevailed, which made it difficult for the person to be able to maximize his, ownership of that property and so forth, or some changes in density or whatever. I think it would be difficult to write those things, quite frankly. But once again, I would, sometimes I think what happens with these, variances is you end up, whoever comes in the door and pays the fee gets a variance unless he's got all the neighbors against him. So that's just something to think about, I think. I am basically in favor of the 1 acre.
To help us review this, Tom, you've spoken on the one. Would you care to weigh in here and remind us what you've spoken about, please? And introduce yourself for the record.
Tom Palm. I guess I would call myself an interested party. And you're becoming familiar with, I guess, what I've presented. But to kind of go back on that, first of all, to respond to Commissioner Coleman, I think as soon as you start to try and project what rules might be necessary, you immediately either miss a whole pile or you put stuff in place that really isn't necessary. So I agree with Commissioner Johnson. I think you just avoid that whole issue. You allow people to come before the planning commission, present their case on a one-by-one basis, and you make a decision at that point.
Can I ask you a question? We turned you down for one, didn't we, our planning department? Over this, I just wanted, so that we're all clear, it's been a while back, if I remember.
And to kind of go back on that, the reasoning behind that was because at this point, there is no avenue for a variance to come before you the way the statute is written. And I think what you're suggesting would kind of cut the cake here so that, yes, if you intend to keep the 1 acre rule in place, you at least then allow an avenue for people such as myself to come forward and say, I think we have a special condition here. Can we please address that and look at that? And maybe Brittany can speak to this again, but my understanding is right now, the way the statute is written, it's a 1 acre hard and fast. There are no possibilities for variance. So if you allow an application for a CUP to address that issue when somebody does have one less than 1 acre, whether it's 0.99 or whatever it is, then you can address those issues individually. And I don't think you're opening the floodgates here. I don't think you're going to see a huge amount. I mean, that's my assessment, whether it's right or wrong. But
other questions for Tom?
If I could,
Go
Tom.
ahead.
I understand the simplicity of that approach, but it does seem kind of frightful to just say, well, show up, and if you can get enough support, or there's a modest amount of opposition, then we will approve this. I mean, we have absolutely no standard at all, other than the fact that you show up and say, well, I'm having some problems here or there, and so why can't I get a variance? And the question is, we don't have any standard at all, nothing.
No, you have an enormous amount of standards.
Which,
As you've put forth in the draft proposal, there are a lot of hoops that someone has to jump through before you even get to the point where you can apply, whether it's for a CUP or otherwise.
Meaning the new ordinance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think you've already set the bar at a certain level where a lot of people are either going to try and fly under the wire and not try and meet those requirements, or they are going to, as I am, try to meet all those requirements, and as we've done, and now we're just up against this 1 acre requirement. So I think you're kind of mixing apples and oranges here. And I don't, again, I don't know how many rules you would have to put in place to try and cover all possible
but
situations.
these
you might
rules
run.
are standard rules for operation, are they not, mostly?
Yeah.
Just for operation. Has nothing to do with the circumstance or the conditions of the 1 acre lot location. This 1 acre is located here, and it gets a variance, and this one over here doesn't. Why? Well, both of them complied with all the standards, or promised to anyway. But maybe there's circumstances, we're talking about the relationship of that property to the surrounding property and/or the activities in that neighborhood is what I'm talking about.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with that.
And so a density standard or something like that, or something that would give us, and it could be a series of things. But I know we do this all the time. I mean, we do provide exceptions without a standard if someone stands up with what we think is just a decent argument. And I don't regret those necessarily, but I'm a little concerned that maybe we ought to have some standards and other than operational, because the operational standards are easy. They're multiple and they can be distracting and, irritating, but they can be complied with pretty easily. It's just a matter of, decent management, I think. So,
Well, I guess not knowing what those conditions would be, I don't know how to respond.
yeah, well, and I'm searching here. And I don't mean to think that I'm going to imply something that I am not happy with, or this is early in the process, at least in my own mind. And I just thought of this as we started this discussion. So, and I'm going to try to search for some more precise answers here, because I understand that we need to have something a little more hard and fast. But I just don't want to see too much of this endless sort of, exception after exception after exception. And without, just because somebody lives in a neighborhood where most of the people are gone and don't show up at the meeting. And it seems to me there should be something more than just the operational compliance that's the standard. Okay.
Thanks, Jim. Can I throw in one more before you go, Kevin? One of the other items that I had in mind in this, basically, we have about, if you go by the numbers that are spoken about, we have about 300 of these units that aren't permitted within the county. The remainder of them are in incorporated areas. But it also gives an opportunity, some of those don't meet our criteria. And I'm not sure how much of the criteria. I'm sure 1 acre is one of the items on that criteria. It does allow for those people to step forward to make an application and get under the roof of our ordinance system. And that is one of the things that the committee and the Board of Commissioners had specifically in their plan of the direction from the planning department to update this ordinance. Go ahead, Kevin.
I can't support the 1 acre. That's just an arbitrary figure that came out. There's nothing that indicates that somebody with a half-acre parcel, with a quarter-acre parcel, with any parcel is not going to be a good operator. We just had a condition today where there was a 10-acre parcel and they didn't like the garbage going over. That's an operator issue. That operator needs to be addressed that, hey, you can't let garbage going out there. But there's nothing that says that a person with a quarter-acre lot can't perform every responsible thing for a vacation home rental. And I believe that we're going to see multiple, again, we have enough things that come before the committee. I don't think that we need to expand that by saying if you don't have 1 acre parcel, because we'll have .99s, we'll have .98s, we'll have .7s, anybody that's going to come in under 1 acre, because there are a lot of vacation home rentals that are here, that are going to be here, and there's going to be more that come. I just think it's an issue that needs to be addressed in a different way. I have no problem dealing with vacation home renters that are not good vacation home renter owners. That needs to be the issue, not the size of their lawn.
Any more questions for Tom? We'll let Tom sit down so he doesn't have to stand up here and get poked at.
Well, and I will add that I
Go ahead.
completely agree with Commissioner Kuhn. On the other hand, if there seems to be majority against removing the 1 acre. So my request is that if we can't go with what you're suggesting, then the fallback would be at least to allow an avenue to
Under
address
the
that issue.
conditional use permit.
Yeah. And I guess my final request, we kind of are in a conversational cul-de-sac here on this 1 acre issue. I guess I'd like to see it decided one way or the other and move on.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So I believe I've expressed my agreeance with Kevin that the 1 acre rule, I don't see any validity in that. The thing I do see is that just blanket approval of any size lot that meets these conditions through a special permitted use, I have some concerns with, mainly because I think that we need to have a balance of property owner rights, those that are trying to rent the property, but those that are long-term tenants in a neighborhood. We heard that same argument this morning where people were concerned where 50% of their neighborhood, close to, was now vacation home rentals. I think we need something within this. I mean, I don't have a problem with your suggestion, Charlie, of a 1 acre for a special permitted use and then a CUP coming back before us. I think that's agreeable. But before it ever got to that point, I think we need a neighborhood density check in there. Right now, it's a countywide blanket 5% of the county. Well, that could all be centered around Hill City, in these people's areas that they bought for their rural enjoyment of their property. And I think we need to find that balance between an existing property owner and the vacation home rental in that neighborhood areas. I brought that up last time. I apologize. I've been on vacation for the last week and a half, and I haven't given it a whole lot of additional thought as to how we could frame that. But yeah, for it to pass a special permitted use, I think there has to be some kind of regulation on the density of a neighborhood. Otherwise, you're going to end up with 70% of a neighborhood, a community that is vacation home rentals, and those 25% that are left over may end up selling, moving out, any of those kind of things because of what's happened to their neighborhood, what they bought their property for originally. Those are my comments.
Mr. Chair, thank you. That's what I like about these meetings is my mind can change quite often by the comments that get said. And this has been a hot topic quite a bit, and there's been a lot of comments about a lot of different areas. Just as Kevin said, density, this and that, and requirements. This morning I looked up what's an ordinance for. What are we going to follow it? And what I found is an ordinance is a law that usually forbids or restricts a type of activity. Another one was the purpose of the ordinance is for maintaining public health and safety, zoning, public morals, behavior, and general welfare. The second one, I think that's what our ordinance addresses, behavior, morals. It's putting commonwealth health and well-being to the ordinance where you have the state requirements, we're looking out for all that. So when I move forward with this, however these go, I'm going to keep referring back to the health and public safety, property rights of what we need to look at. Are we trying to over-regulate something or try to, just as the gentleman just said, are we trying to regulate something to look out for problems that I think we can take care of? But I'm going to really look at the main purpose of an ordinance would be public health and well-being. And because property owners, whether you live there, and you've heard it today, one person come up and said, I leave for the winter and then it come back. So their vacation home pretty much renting in Arizona and then coming back, but they don't want vacation rentals in their home, in their area. These are the type of things I think a person's got to take a good hard look at is property rights and so forth. We get a lot of passion up here concerning a lot of different things. And I know, Mr. Chair, you're on 1 acre, and that's what I'll stick with. But in my mind I liked your motion, but I can start seeing other sides of this too. And, but I just wanted to make that comment, the main purpose of the ordinance is for health and safety and zoning. And I think that's where I'm going to be headed when I look at these.
Can I throw in a couple of other items? I've been on this for a long time. This is my third go-around on vacation home rentals. And I've sat through the committees, and Joyce has been there. This is greatly discussed. The 1 acre has been a de facto density item for many people. But when we talk about the density, if I remember right, if we're talking 400 units that are in the confines of the county ordinance system, how many houses? Isn't there about 50-some thousand houses in there? Or residents? Think of the percentage we're dealing with in the first place, commissioners. We're a very small percent, 400 versus 50,000. Now, when we get to the density of the particular property, you have a couple of things that fall into place. The special use permit is a new process from the state. It's only, 2 years old? We're trying to fall in line with that because it is protective of property rights. If your property meets these items, then Brittany, if she has a bad time dealing with you, can't keep it from you. Follow me? It's better for the public. They know in advance before they walk up to that desk that they're meeting the criteria for the proper use of their property. And the next thing is this density in the neighborhood. I've listened to committees all the way along talk about density. The very first one talked about density. The second one talked about density. And this one was the only one that officially was given a purpose to actually define and deliver back to the county commissioners something on density. And what's so difficult about that is allowing the property rights, but not turning their property into a liquor license. And that's what we're looking at. If you start density around a particular piece of property because one person doesn't, or 4 people, or that person has 5 people around their property versus another one that has 25, you could go a 10 acre and have 20 of the 25 not in agreement with it. You begin to develop, and we will finally affect the equalization department. You're going to have a change in the look at that property on what it's worth. That's come up in these meetings. Go ahead, Joyce.
May I speak?
You absolutely. I'm ready for you. I just got too wordy there. Thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record, Joyce.
Joyce Shagru, and I've been before you before, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness on this issue. And I'm doing this off the cuff. As many of you know, I live in Silver City. Our lots are small. We have one, what I call a business operation. It's their form of living, their economic income. That has 5 rentals, and they're good managers, as I've said before. And then we have a number that they manage. They're well managed, all on small lots. And I've been involved since the beginning, back when this was a very nasty process, very public, nasty process in our community. And it's hard for me to describe the difference when the 1 acre rule went in. And I have been on the side of the ordinance, Health and safety is very important. The health department does a lot of that, and I'm very much interested in that, and that people conform. We have grandfathered legal non-conforming in the community. We have quite a few that rent during the rally. But the tenor of the community now is very different from what it was back before the 1 acre rule. And we're very split in the community in whether we should have the 1 acre rule or not. It's helped, from my perspective, it's helped us lessen the conflict in the community. Some don't agree with it, of course, because they have the smaller lots and they have no avenue to turn them into a rental. And that's okay with me. As you know, I live very close to one, right out my window now. Not a problem. Good managers, they can take care of things out there. But the tenor in the community is totally different. The undercurrent is still there. We will never agree on whether we should have more rentals or no more rentals. That's just a given because we feel so very strongly about it. But I don't sense the anger, the personal animosity. It's more of a business transaction in a way now, and it's been so helpful to us. But we're in a very, very dense situation. Density is our issue, very dense. And closeness has a difference, well managed or not. It's when they're like the windows from here to the corner from mine, and people walking back and forth in front of my window that I don't know. Okay, that startles me, and I always check it out. Because I know the managers tell them, do not walk across that yard in front of her window. I know they have that instruction. So that always startles me. And I'm not a fearful person, but if you have someone who, and it was a neighbor just this week, walks right in front of my window from here to Karen or less, back and forth, that makes one uneasy. So we do need some space for these. I really think we do. But I don't know how to explain to you the difference in that community. There's two groups there, always will be, but at least we can say hi on the street now, which we didn't do before.
Questions for Joyce? Thank you very much, Joyce. And Joyce has been a long person. As long as I've been involved in it, you've been involved with it. So she's been through a lot on this. Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chair, we've got so many things to go through. This is one. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to move on. We need to make a decision. I'm comfortable with the 1 acre using a CUP for anything under it. I've read all these different things from the different folks about it. I've kind of kicked it around the last 2 weeks, and I can see both sides, but I really think the 1 acre, the old KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. I just think the 1 acre is the way to go, and then we'll work from that. I know what Jim's talking about, and I understand that. I just, like out in Hill City, you've got cabins built on rocks, you've got cabins built on mountains, you've got cabins down in the bottom. You know, what are you going to put in to say this is what it's going to be if we make an exception? I don't know. I agree with Jim, but I don't know how we would do it. So in my way of thinking, the way we've got it here is the way it probably should be.
Would you care to make that a motion? We'll see if we can get you a second so we can discuss it as a motion.
I certainly would. I would make a motion that we accept minimum lot size, 1 acre, required for all VHRs. That would be my motion.
Is there a second for that?
Mr. Chair, I would second.
Got to give you a second. You're going to second for discussion?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim. And then you want to.
I agree. I mean, it's imperfect, but that's what it's all about. I mean, we're constantly crafting imperfect solutions, but I do think we need to move on. And I wish there was a better way of addressing some of these issues about the placement of these properties without imperiling the value of them and so on and so forth. But I don't think this is particularly in the county, is a huge impediment to someone being able to use their property productively. I think it's an appropriate move, and we'll get a feeling for whether this is feasible. And we have a good operator out there who thinks he can live with it, and I think that's probably true of most people at the moment that have VHRs in the county. So I would endorse Michael's motion.
Kevin?
I can only see the numbers of Rapid Valley, because Rapid Valley, part of it is unincorporated. And there's a lot of people out there with quarter-acre lots. So let's say that they're even at the .99. What's everybody going to say? Because they come in at .99 and say, can you give me vacation home rental authority? Are you going to, everybody will say yes, because that .9 is nothing. When they come in at .75, what are you going to say? .75 is still a pretty good sized lot. .5, which there's a lot of .5 acres outside of Rapid City, in Rapid Valley, getting out towards Box Elder. .5 is still a pretty good sized lot. You go start looking at houses and subdivisions, and a half-acre lot is enjoyed by a lot of people. Now you get down to a quarter-acre lot, which there's a ton of quarter-acre lots and less. I just see no reason that we have to penalize those people, make them come in, get a CUP, whatever else we've got options for them. I see the purpose of it non-existent, in that we're just creating more oversight that we don't need to do.
Kevin B., I saw you squirming over there. Did you want to?
So I fundamentally agree with Kevin wholeheartedly that I don't know that we need to regulate lot size, as long as there was a way for them to be able to come back before the commission to get an approval. I can somewhat support that. But one of the reasons I really stand with Kevin is I believe that that would really help bring a lot of these non-compliant businesses into compliance. If we keep it as a 1 acre rule, then they're going to continue to work under the radar. And then we've got a compliance issue with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring people into compliance with an ordinance. And if we create too many roadblocks or hurdles, they're going to skip it. Just like prohibition, everybody still continue to make alcohol. They're going to continue to operate vacation home rentals outside of our ordinance. And then we've got a huge compliance issue, and we have no enforcement capability. Can we limit the ordinance to a point where we can bring in a lot more compliance, and then we've got some more teeth within the ordinance to be able to help those situations?
Lloyd?
I just want some clarification on the motion. It's pretty much the motion on the floor is no change, right?
Correct,
Right?
as is.
Because as we talked about, it has a different option. It's pretty much no change. Okay, I won't support it.
I have
Aaron?
a question for Brittany. The minimum lot size, minimum 1 acre lot size is required for all VHRs. So if it does not meet 1 acre, does it also need a variance then?
Yeah.
Yes.
And a conditional use permit? If they get the variance for a smaller lot size, would they need a conditional use permit then also?
It would be two processes unless it was written in the ordinance such that the criteria for a special use permit, permitted use is this, the criteria for a conditional use permit is this. Then that way that would be that avenue and the variance wouldn't be required.
I would prefer to see that happen rather than force that expense on people with smaller lot sizes.
I know Mike hasn't spoke, but that was my problem too. I do not see use of the variance process. I see that too hot and cold, and And like Jim has talked about, some things can happen on a good day and some things can happen on a bad day, depending on attendance. And so I want to keep it away from the variance process. That's the only other process they would have to go under the motion we're discussing. So that was my idea too, was in there. I just am not ever been happy with the variance process.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I agree with Kevin that, that we would be forcing some people to remain underground. But then the argument becomes, any restriction becomes an incentive to go underground. Some people simply don't want to or don't feel they can afford to comply with standards. And pretty soon the standards get lower and lower. And I would just, if we think we've got some political flack from people who come here when we have the VHR issue because they don't want a vacation home rental next door, you start letting each and every quarter acre lot or every third one become a vacation home rental, you'll have a herd of people in here in the valley screaming about the fact that their kids now are living next door to a motel, you know. I mean, it seems to me, going to be an awful lot of political flack if we reduce this to the point where it is almost every, subdivision house out in the valley qualifies. And I would hate to see that kind of, I just don't think that's the way to handle your housing supply inventory. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's, and I do find it frustrating that there's many people who are not complying. And I wish there was a method of doing that. But anyway, that's.
Jim, I'm just going to throw in one thing, though. We're talking about an ordinance that contains two directions, the special use permit as well as the conditional use permit. And for the planning department to have a listed criteria that is approved for a special use permit, they would have to have some direction in regard to the lot size. In other words, they have to have a guideline to go by so that it meets a criteria for them to check it off and say the applicant has met that. So in a way, there's got to be something in there, whether it's 1 acre, 10 acres, or 0.25, it doesn't matter. It has to have a criteria for the planning department to properly administer special use permit. Thank you.
I just comment on Kevin's comments too, that I agree that that right now there's a lot of them in Rapid Valley. And when they're good operators, the only time that anybody knows that they have a vacation rental is when somebody complains against it. If they're a good operator, they aren't going to have any complaints against it. And we're not going to have the Department of Health that has come in and reviewed it to give them their Department of Health. We're not going to have a sales tax license in most cases probably because they aren't being reviewed. So I just, again, I still disagree that we need to put a 1 acre condition on that, and that we will get more in compliance if we don't have that. And I think that's one of the significant things that's going to hold a lot of people back is that 1 acre, because there are so many under 1 acre that don't want to have to come in and do a variance or a SUP or whatever you want to have to do. So I will hold that a 1 acre requirement is not needed.
Tom, please introduce yourself for the record.
Hi, Tom Palm. Just a question of the committee is with the proposed amendment that, trying to think of my correct wording here, with the way that you have put forth a motion now, that does not seem to include any language to amend the draft proposal to do what you are saying.
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
You are understanding it correctly.
Okay, so I guess my request would be if we're not going to amend the 1 acre, can you please put in language now that would then amend the draft proposal in such a way that would allow some sort of avenue to have under a CUP or however you want to do it, but less than 1 acre. I guess one other comment is that, again, because of the difference between renting over 28 days or less than 28 days, you have separated out rentals. And I guess I'm not exactly clear on why the vacation home rental is falling under this umbrella of quite a number of additional rules where long-term rental is not. And I have some understanding why there are some criteria for that. But still, I think you're putting a lot of rules on vacation home rentals, including the 1 acre rule, that you're not on long-term rentals. People can't choose their neighbors. I can't buy a house and then insist that all my neighbors do what I want. I wish I could do that, but that doesn't happen. So I guess that's just something to keep in mind, is where that difference is and why that is being put in place.
Tom, as I understand, you moved to this area recently, or how long?
Oh, no, we've lived in Rapid City or the Black Hills for 30-some years.
In the Black Hills. I remember your request. State statute has a lot to do with the 28 days and whatnot. There's actually a third, 14 days. Anybody can operate for 14 days, which creates a lot of concern in trying to put together good zoning ordinances. And we've all spoken about that even during applications. Just wanted to make sure that you knew there was 3 categories, really. One in our ordinance, 28 days or more permanent rental, as well as 14 days or less that everyone has available to them, irregardless of the size of property.
Yes, and I do understand that. The 14-day, it seems like it came directly out of the rally.
It did.
Sure.
So, and whether that, well, obviously that affects Pennington County just as much as Meade.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Mr.
attention.
Chair?
Yes.
I would make a substitute motion that a minimum 1 acre lot size is required for all VHRs applying for an SPU. And smaller lot sizes must apply for a conditional use permit.
Is there a second to that?
I'd second that.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it took me a little while to get this. Well, I mean, that's really no change. You know, that's what they do now, if I'm correct.
No. There is no avenue for anything less than 1 acre at present, Commissioner.
I thought we've heard some that came in under 1
Variance.
acre, and that's where I was getting confused at.
Right, Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. For the ones that are under 1 acre, they have been in front of the Board of Adjustment as a variance. And to my knowledge, only one has been approved. And I do believe that one was because they could prove that they were actually operating prior to the ordinance.
Okay.
Right
But
after
all
they
of the
did.
other ones have been denied.
Okay,
So
the
there is
motion
no avenue for ones under an acre except for a variance.
except for a variance. So this, the new motion on the floor, they could apply for a conditional use permit, not the variance.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Brittany? You had kind of a scowl on your face when I said that. Are you thinking this is going to be a big problem?
No, I apologize. No, not at all. It helps our office because then if they come in, we will know what direction that they need to apply for because it'll be different. I mean, all of the criteria will be the same, but we'll have the ones that will go for a conditional use that'll have to be advertised and things, and then the ones for the SPU. So with that, keep that in mind when we're looking at fees, that the conditional use permit, because of the process,
Could be more expensive.
could be more than the SPU because that is an administrative review.
Okay.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair.
Jim.
So if we endorse this, then anyone with less than 1 acre will then be able to come and apply for a conditional use permit. And the standards that would be applied would be the same that somebody currently does. And virtually.
Same for everyone.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Virtually every one of those would probably have to be approved because they would meet the standard as such. And it seems to me that you would have an explosion of additional vacation home rentals. And you might have somebody with a quarter of an acre. And, I mean, there would seem to be little limitation in neighborhoods, particularly, and I'm thinking of the Valley, which is the only place that really has an urban kind of environment in which people would really feel that. And once again, it's no different than if you had 1 acre. It's now we're going to allow virtually somebody with any amount of property, unless there's a standard I'm unaware of. I mean,
I don't mind replying on that since I was the
okay.
crazy guy to put it down in print. I assume we are volunteer citizens serving on a committee. And when you begin to get below the 1 acre, which was the checkoff amount, I assume as a commissioner that I have some right to listen a little more strongly to the neighbors in regarding to their pleasure or displeasure at having these units and cast my vote accordingly. Yes, they may meet many of the criteria the same. They may even meet them all. But again, we do have concerns about densities in neighborhoods. We've turned down vacation home rental requests in this board or commission since I've been back on it. So that's what I thought by at least allowing people the use of their property and to sit and talk to other members of tax-paying society to see how that fits with their thoughts.
I see what you're saying, Charlie, and I think you may be right, that we can then use that as a standard, basically, when we can't, when it's 1.5 acres or something like that. And if that would be effective, then I think I might be able to endorse that. But I just want to have some kind of leverage and I don't want it to be something that's not, even-handed. Just like
Yeah.
the guy who shows up with most of the opposition wins and the people who don't, and that's.
Kevin B.
So the one concern that I see with that is if you just have a checkbox, that anything that's rural residential, you can blanket that and you're still not addressing the density or giving the public a forum to be able to come and voice their opinion. If we drop that to a 1/4 acre, but we regulate the density of a neighborhood of, say, 30% of rental homes for 5 acres, and we put the onus on the applicant to show what their density is and what other operators are within that area, I think that allows them to check their boxes. It allows a lot of people to come into compliance, and it still addresses the public concern of the neighborhood densities that they have, whether it's in the valley or whether it's out in the hills. We've got a lot of rural property within Pennington County. I would like, if we put a CUP process on the under 1 acre, we may be up here for hours every few weeks hearing multiple CUPs for vacation home rentals. I like the process of a special permitted use. I don't like that we can't somewhat protect the property rights of people that live in these neighborhoods. So I'm pretty adamant about that, and it's hard for me to make an approval on a 1 acre ruling within this without also having some kind of adjustment to the density requirement within this ordinance.
Mike?
Well, the density thing is my big bugaboo all along, but it's something we're going to have to address separately. And I know what Kevin's saying. I guess we could, back off on this, continue it, go ahead and do the density and get that figured out and come back. But in my mind, I still think the 1 acre with the CUP for under that is the simplest way to at least get this thing going.
Joyce?
Joyce Chagru, just a thought as I'm listening. This morning, you approved another VHR up in Alpine Acres, okay? And we had just another one just a few weeks ago. That's a very hot item in that community, whether you're aware of it or not. My thought is, if you were aware that you just did a review on one up there and approved that, that's been an issue in the past, but I think we've got them into compliance now. Were you aware that you added one more VHR in that Alpine Acres this morning? One more approval. And it's interesting to me because I know quite a few of the people up there, and I know the couple that's just sold that property, and I know what their attitude was to have any more in the community. Same with the one you just did a few weeks ago. Were you aware that you did this, and what was your thought process as you went through knowing that that's a hot community? Started out that way. It's a hot community for VHRs. They don't want any more. They've got well over 1 acre. They've got big issues. Were you aware that you did that this morning, and what was your thought process?
Joyce, I'll answer mine. When I read it at home, I noted that.
Yeah.
But there was no complaint
No,
in the
no,
staff
but
report, and it was published.
the word on the street is they don't come in anymore because it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
The community, the attitude in the community hasn't changed, but you just don't see them. They just fight between themselves up there. So.
I'll address your comment as well. We don't see where the density is in our packet. The only way that we know that there's multiple vacation home rentals is if we go back through and look at every approval that we've ever done.
Yeah, have a memory.
My suggestion is that we put the onus on the applicant to show us how their vacation home rental affects the density of the neighborhood they're looking at it operating it in. That gives us that opportunity to say, or the planning department to say, wait a minute, you're over densifying this neighborhood with vacation home rentals, so we're not going to pass the special permitted use. Or it comes before us and they have to show us the density of those neighborhoods. Now we can make an intelligent decision without a whole ton of research to try to figure out who's got vacation home rentals in what neighborhoods, what communities. So that's kind of where my, my repetitive focus is here.
And that's part of what triggered me to make my comments was, did you know what you did? And some of you, because historically some of you probably didn't, but maybe that's a way to do it if they can require that they tell you the history of that community as it relates to density.
Mr. Chair.
Just a thought of.
I do have to leave.
Yes.
So I would like to offer that we postpone the 1 acre rule discussion or decision until a later date.
You have to put a date on the postponement. So it could be next
after
meeting.
we have a density agreement.
That's certainly a density discussion and agreement.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
We've got motions on the floor.
Yeah, we do have
We have a substitute motion and a motion.
He has the right to request a postponement on your motion because under Robert's rules, he can request that, and we vote on that. It's debatable as to the right of the postponement, but it's not debatable as to the issue. So if he can't get a second, then we're going to move on. Is there a second to that? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to address a little bit of on the density. Residents have covenants that address what they allow in their area. So they have them. And then there's been a lot of stress on this that like too many in one area, I particularly know one area where the residents and VHRs get along perfectly. It's well known if you buy in this area, that's what's happening, and there's residents live there year round and they get along fine. So it just seems like we're being unequal when we're talking about that. It still goes back to property rights, I think, and covenants. I mean, this talk has created one person who split their lots into putting covenants that there is no VHRs. That's what he wanted. And that's what passed, except for one. He wanted one. I remember that one. So that's what covenants are for. And I think when you go to buy a property, how are you supposed to know all this? You get your covenants, you get this, and you know what you're getting into. And so I just wanted to pass on that there is a community out there that has vacation home rentals and residents, and they get along perfectly fine.
Thank you, Lee. I want to throw in one thing before Tom. We have to remember as a commission that the density matter applies to both conditional use permit and to the special use permit. It's in the ordinance, the way the ordinance is written now. So what we've been kicking around here is not necessarily per the ordinance, and I don't want it to get out of hand. That's why density was a separate issue from these two matters. Though I certainly agree with both. It involves this density issue involves others. The way the ordinance is written right now, it is a separate issue, and there's a lot of reason to discuss it as a separate issue. What's available to, what would I say, administered? Is that the way administered density? That was where the committee and department and whatnot. That's a difficult issue itself that needs to be discussed. Go ahead, Tom.
So I guess I'd just like to comment on putting the onus of discovering who all has a VHR in your neighborhood on an applicant. If the commission and the county doesn't have that data, mainly because a lot of VHRs are flying under the wire, how is a prospective applicant going to come before you and say, these are the VHRs in my neighborhood, they're not registered, they're not licensed? How is that person supposed to gather that data other than going up and knocking on the door? So I don't see how that's a workable solution at all. I think the more people you can bring under your umbrella and regulate them through licensing, the more data you can actually have on who's out there operating. Right now, you don't know. I mean, the county doesn't know. The city doesn't really know. So without that information, how do you proceed with trying to come up with what the density relationship is when you don't even know who's out there?
Thank you, Tom. As a chair, I guess I would like to, before you go, Kevin, I'd like to see us have the courage to go ahead and register a vote, and we can either move on and postpone this if it doesn't seem to be a satisfactory. I think we're overthinking it right now. And we need to come up with something that it's going to be continued to be reviewed. You know that. But we've got to move forward. This was one of the table items. We need to get to the second table item today as well. And that's not an easy one. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I would just like to address again and say, we are penalizing or will be penalizing a number of good vacation home renters by leaving the 1 acre in there. I am much more in favor of penalizing poor vacation home renters, not renters, vacation home rental owners, than I am of penalizing them because of the size of their property. Good owners will operate, they will keep the place maintained, they will have good guests because that's how they operate and how they're successful in that. It's the poor operators that we need to find some way to get out of the business. If they don't know how to attract the right clientele, if they don't know how to maintain the guests that are there, which is not hard, that's where I think our focus needs to be. I still am 100% against the 1 acre lot size requirement.
Additional discussion from the commission, from the audience. Hearing none, we might as well do this in a roll call type of order. I want to make sure that it's recorded so that we can move on. Go ahead.
And it's on the substitute motion.
Yes, on the substitute motion.
Kevin?
No.
Lloyd?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Charlie?
I'm sorry, I'm really surprised what's going on. You should read the substitute motion back. I'm not sure. I was expecting a no from Karen. Maybe I didn't understand what was on
That was her motion.
Can you read that, please? And I would like to refresh the roll call. Please read that motion.
Moved by McGregor and seconded by Lewis, that lot sizes 1 acre and above apply for special use permit for a vacation home rental, and anything less than 1 acre in size apply for conditional use permit for a vacation home rental.
Okay, thank you. Please go through the roll call again.
Kevin?
No.
Lloyd?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
Kevin?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Charlie?
Yes. Fail 4-3, right? Okay. Now, before you leave, if you want to put your postpone, you certainly can. If you've got 2 minutes, you can get it probably done today.
I will move to postpone the 1 acre rule until after a decision on density has been approved.
Is there a second to his motion? No second. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. The second item that was brought off the table is, in other words, it will remain the same, the 1 acre as the committee wrote up.
With the continued use permit under, or conditional use permit underneath it.
Yes, there'll be both, yes. In other words, both permits, special use permit and conditional use permits will operate with 1 acre, the way the committee wrote it up.
Okay, with that, then I move that we remove the 1 acre minimum lot requirement.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and second to remove the 1 acre minimum lot requirement. Discussion from the audience. Go ahead, Tom. You're certainly allowed.
Tom Palm, sorry, just so I understand the process. So the motion that was just voted on does not allow any avenue for less than 1 acre, either under an SPR or a CUP. Is that correct?
Correct. It would only allow what the committee submitted here and the planning department has submitted, which is the 1 acre.
Then I certainly would.
Support the new motion.
I would support the new motion. I certainly disagree with the motion as just voted on.
Thank you.
I think you're doing yourself and the community a huge disservice.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm
sorry, I don't understand what the motion is.
The motion is to remove, please, you got to come up just for the record. You know the rules.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Dessel Peterson, member of the committee. I'm sorry, we were chatting and
All right, the motion
another member of the
failed.
committee is here, and so we were chatting, trying to understand what the first motion was. And then, so we're not sure what's happening right now.
Very good. I'll try to back up and correct me if I do it wrong. The first motion that was on the table allowed for the 1 acre to remain in the special use permit, and for any that applicants that were below the 1 acre requirement could apply under the conditional use permit. That failed, 4-3. Now the motion is on the floor to remove the 1 acre requirement. Well, excuse me, that left the 1 acre as the committee wrote it. Now the motion that's on the table is to remove the 1 acre requirement, period. Okay, that's what we're discussing right now, Dessel.
We had a motion and a second.
Yes. I'm going to weigh in. I'd rather stay with what, if we're going to do a variance, I'd rather stay with what the committee and 7 people came up with as a basis. And I know how strong you feel about this, Kevin, but I'm like, I think we still need that other avenue. And I'm hoping down the road that'll happen for people with less than 1 acre to be able to stand up here and get their property use recognized based upon a good presentation of why. So,
I hold, Mr. Chair, I hold that those good people are out there and will do that without a 1 acre
Yeah.
limitation.
Yeah, I think abandoning the 1 acre without some kind of a formula for density, et cetera, would, I couldn't endorse that. So I would rather stick with the 1 acre. Now, Kevin's proposal, young Kevin's proposal.
Kevin B or Kevin K?
Kevin B, I guess it is. Yeah. Okay. I would like, I'm not totally opposed to allowing people with less than 1 acre to have vacation home rentals, because I think Kevin's right that many of them are excellent operators. I just am fearful of what might happen out in the valley in that regard, and I'd like to have some kind of mechanism where we had some sort of predictive power to be able to expect what's going to happen. In other words, how many potential vacation home rentals might we have? How would we, how dense would it be? Would we have one on every street or 5 or 6 on every street? I mean, I'm so fearful that it could get out of hand, I guess. And so I guess I'm looking for some kind of a formula that might give us some, like I say, predictive powers of what to expect. I'm also frightened by the fact that we have no idea how many vacation home rentals are out there. And I don't understand why we don't. These people publicly advertise every day on VRBO and Airbnb. It's like putting a sign out on a highway. I think we should contact these people and say, we invite you to come into compliance. I mean, I think that we need to recognize that there are a lot of people underground, and we do know that, but I think we need to make some effort to provide some kind of compliance here. And
Jim, can I weigh in?
Yeah.
The committee thought of that and added references to that. Now they would have a number that they put on their advertisements. Like other counties, other areas of the country are using it. That has to be included. Contractors use it in some parts of the country. You have to have a contractor license in your advertisement. So that has been covered, and the committee thought about that. So I'm comfortable with that part of it. We've also added a lot of fodder to the Board of Commissioners review of this when we get done with it after this particular item. This has never been reviewed on the extent and the level that it has been. And that is really a good thought to me, because it should have been reviewed long ago. And we're doing a good job on that. So Kevin, go ahead.
I may review or revise my motion. Brittany, could you come up? So right now, we're talking about either a variance or a CUP or SUP. What could we do where they would come into compliance just by coming into the office and say, I only have a 0.5 acre lot, without having to go through a variance, without having to do anything? You have a lot of authority on a lot of things that you should be able to say, okay, now they're in compliance, they're less than that, they've come in and they've done it. We've now put those people in compliance because they've come in and made that.
Or a special use permit, you're saying?
For whatever it takes to just come in, not to have to come before this board, because we already know that she's got the authority to come in and say, yes, they've gone through the application, they've made all of the Department of Health, they've made all the Department of Revenue, things that they need to do, and just say, okay, you can do this. You've come in now and you are approved. Again, because I think that we have so many good vacation home owners out there that we're penalizing them again by having to come in, take the time to come in here and do this, where we could do it, because we're all going to probably approve it anyway when they come in, unless there's some really haywire thing that you'd probably catch anyway. If we could do something like that with approval just from your office, without having to come back here and take our time and take their time and their money, I would revise my motion on that to say there is a 1 acre lot size. Anything less than that has to come in and just gets approval from the planning director.
So if I may, the ordinance is what gives me authority, so unless it says it in the ordinance what the criteria would be, Jason or I couldn't sign off on the permit. So if it was a 1 acre or less than an acre, we'd have to have some stipulations, meaning are they on public water and sewer? Are they, I mean, there would have to be certain things. But the ordinance is what gives us authority. So if it's still a 1 acre minimum, there's nothing that we could do outside of what the ordinance says without a variance that would give us authority to sign off on permits. So it's really up to what the ordinance says or any criteria or stipulations for it. So if there's a 1 acre minimum, the only option we have basically is to deny it. And then they'd either have to take our decision up to the Board of Adjustment or they'd have to apply for a variance in front of the Board of Adjustment. That's really the only options that they have. We're bound by the rules that are in the ordinance. So those are the only administrative decisions that we can make is based on what our ordinance says.
So what would the verbiage in the ordinance be to allow you to do it?
It would have to give, so under the SPU, they would be 1 acre. The other avenue was the conditional use permit, or just get rid of the 1 acre, or unless they are less than an acre, have certain things. They have to be on public water and sewer, or they have to have public water and they can have a private sewer. There would have to be some, I'm just throwing those out there as different criteria, but there would have to be some kind of somewhat non-subjective check boxes. Because it's
And I don't-
difficult to put staff in a subjective, because we don't have those kinds of authority. Our authority for our decision-making is administrative, so we have to look at, like concrete criteria, like does it have this or does it have this, yes or no? So
What's the fee for a person to come in and do a variance?
it's $420, which 100 of it is refundable when they return the sign, so $320.
So 300, so that's $12,000 if we got all 400 people coming in that we're charging the community.
Right, and that would be up to the Board of Adjustment to approve them. So that's the other, so.
Yeah. My motion holds.
Okay, understood. Any other discussion on Kevin's motion? Discussion from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, reread the, in fact, why don't you do, we just had we lost a member and we could tie this time, so I would rather have a roll call.
Moved by Kane and second by LaCroy to remove the 1 acre lot size requirement. Kevin?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Carly?
No.
3-3.
3-3.
So, Mr. Chair, question.
Yes.
Procedurally,
It comes up to.
if we wanted to do the previous motion, it'd have to be opposition from one of the members that could bring it back up, correct?
That's correct. And it has to be from those that voted against it, correct?
I would offer the previous motion, which would be the 1 acre with a special use permit or CUP permit. That was
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to allow the special use permit to remain at 1 acre and the CUP to be less than 1 acre. Is that correct per applicant's?
yes, with the
filing?
special use permit
Did I
instead.
understand it correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Just a clarification, so they wouldn't have to come to the Board of Adjustments, wouldn't have to do a variance.
That's right.
It would still include the staff's recommendation
Yes.
on that because they are also
Yep.
checking off on the special use. Correct? You still have to make a recommendation on the CUP.
Correct, we do, but it would come in front of this board just like it is, and then some of the, criteria that you could look at it to review it, if there's, they're surrounded by Forest Service, if they have public water, if they, some of those, I call them kind of subjective criteria that this board has the authority to review to make their decision.
Okay. We're showing
Thank
a
you.
willingness to compromise here.
All right.
And that's the only reason that I'm doing it, so that there is a viable option to do it. I still disagree with it, but as long as there's an option for them to come in, I will go to that point too.
I understand that, Kevin. You've been in that department for a long time, and you've brought that up over 2 terms on the board. That's how you see fit on that, and I agree that you always put it on the table that way. So thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're on to, would you like to take a break before we get on to parking? All right. Let's be back here at 11:20. Is that fair? Thank you. It's a recess. I'm going to go 10 seconds early. A good question came up during the break. What items on the discussion memo that we had, that we approved, have been addressed? We will have addressed the 1 acre. The parking is not addressed. The transfer, they're looking at wording. We passed a motion to look at wording on that. So that's been addressed. Number 4 was the final draft on the local contact person. We passed a motion on that. Density has not been discussed. Moratorium done. And other items. So if we were to look at it, we got parking, density, and other items are still remaining on the memo, of which, as I pointed out at the start, we would have to put on a continuance that names when it will come up. It doesn't have to be the next meeting. I would like to see it the next meeting, but that's up to you guys. You guys are the commission. So we're going to move forward. We're on to item number 2, and this is the parking requirements. And hopefully everyone will try to remember what we reviewed from the past. I can find my little thing and tell you what I thought. And basically what I thought was that the vacation home rental applicants, the bedrooms are the minimum requirements. I believe that's the way it reads right now, Jason. It's minimum requirements. And that we go look at an additional requirement in regards to trailers, tow vehicles, UTVs, ATVs, et cetera. Probably not the ATVs as much as the UTVs, that they also have to provide parking per county ordinance for those vehicles. Floor is open.
Well, one of the things that Kevin over here talked about was out in the valley. How do you work this with the small lots and the streets? You know, and that's, I guess the thing that I think about is the streets are public, so they're allowed to park there. But I don't know how you put it into the ordinance if they don't have room for enough parking on their own land. Do you say overflow or the extra 2 is going to go out in front? I don't know how you do that, but somehow you've got to figure something out, because some of these small lots like Kevin talked about, there's no way you're going to put all these parking lots in there.
I don't think, I'm going to throw one out here. In the county, it's different than public. It's not public, is it? They actually, the county names has requirements for parking on their right-of-way.
I agree. I mean, it's got to be a paved, in the city, it's got to be a paved spot, which is gravel, you know, something along those lines. You can't just park it on the grass in city. And so, yeah.
As well as you can't park on the right-of-way of the county road, the drainage or that sort of thing, can you, in the county?
No, on the county, I'd have to refer to our ordinance.
Oh, no.
I'm thinking about city.
Go ahead. Brittany, help us on this one.
Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. So for any use, whether it be a vacation home rental, a single-family residence, you have to have enough parking for that use on your lot. So anything, we don't count the street for any of the uses. So though the street parking is allowed, but it's probably overflow from whatever uses or people use. But as far as when we do a single-family residence building permit, they have to have all of their parking on their lot. If they come in for any other kind of conditional use outside, not even a vacation home rental, but anything, a home occupation, anything, all of that has to be, they have to show their parking spaces on their lot. The garages count, so if they have a two-car garage, those are 2 spaces. They have, a driveway, 2-car garage, 2 driveway, there's 4 spaces. So just to give you an idea of how we look at the parking. But it all is on the lot. And that's for any of the uses, anytime we issue a building permit.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the way this ordinance is read, off-street parking, all motor vehicles and trailers, including all terrain vehicles and UTVs must be parked off-street in the designated parking spot. I quite frankly don't have a problem with that. I think of we're trying to find a one size fits all for some more urban with street parking and people out in the hills. I think if you're gonna do vacation home rentals or if they're coming with ATVs, you should have a spot for them is the way I feel. That's my 2 cents.
Similar to my write-up on the thing, I thought then it puts the burden on the applicant or the owner, operator, or contact person to make sure that they're properly and planned for.
Exactly.
In other words, if you plan for this many people to bring UTVs and they're parked right in the vehicles, and I'm sure this was reviewed a lot by the committee, as long as you, the operator, have that and you have space for this parking, that's fine. To park it on neighbor's property in the right-of-way of county roads, that's inappropriate. So that was why I wrote it up. I think they can plan for it. They're good operators. A lot of them are good operators and can, if they have the room, they can plan for it. And I don't know, Kevin, you know a lot of the less than 1 acres. Do you think a lot of those have
No, I don't.
an excess of
I don't know
vehicle parking needs?
I don't know a lot of them. I barely know one of them, maybe. I just know that they're
Well,
out
you
there.
said you knew the good operators. I'm
Because
taking
they're the
your
ones
word.
that aren't getting complaints.
Right.
So we don't get complaints. I don't disagree with that. If you've got a trailer with ATVs and stuff, they need to be on site. I don't have a problem with that. Did we remove one of the parking things at the last time? Didn't Karen or somebody remove the maximum?
The maximum? Did
Okay,
we
so we've
remove
changed
or
that
not?
under B.
I don't
that's
know that
out
we
there.
did. Did we?
Yeah, I remember doing that. But I have a question on the minimum of 1 per bedroom, which kind of goes back into the one before on the SPU as far as, this confuses me a little bit. Why a dwelling can't exceed 5 bedrooms, but let's say that you have a bedroom, say you have 6 bedrooms or something, but you can only have 14 people is the max. But even if we have 5 bedrooms and you can have 14 people, if you have 2 in a bedroom, you make 4 of them sleep in the hallway or someplace.
So the 5-bedroom max, so we can kind of go back to some of the stuff that the state does too, and we've reviewed this quite a bit because with our specialty resorts, hotels, all of that language, the state considers 5 units, a vacation home rental, the 5 bedrooms. I believe that that's where it came from. The additional 4 people were, because some vacation home rentals have pull-out couches, or they'll have dual bunk beds for kids in a room, so that allows them to have the 5 bedrooms with additional areas for sleeping. So typically it's a pull-out couch, or they'll have a loft that may have like a bed or something in it that may not be considered a quote-unquote bedroom, but it's a loft, and
So
then
we just need to rename those then
rename those.
as a spare storage area or as a office or as something else, because some houses have more than 5 bedrooms that are only still operating with 14 people.
Right. Well, some of them, we don't allow more than, so if they only can have 5 bedrooms.
And
And
so if you've got an extra room that could be a bedroom,
they either need to make it not a bedroom, they need to create it so it's a space, take off doors, create it like so it's more of a passage. And we have people that have done this. But yes, it's the 5 bedrooms, and it goes back to some of the state criteria with their licensing. When you get over that 5 units, it kicks it into a specialty resort, and then it kicks it into a bed and breakfast. So there's some different connotations to it, and I believe, that 5 bedrooms is there because that's how they consider it. Because once you get 7 and 10 bedrooms, the state starts classifying you as a resort. If you get over more than 10 units, you're a hotel. So I think that's where that 5 bedrooms is appropriate.
Then I guess on the next page, the parking there, the minimum requirement, one per bedroom. Again, if you had a 5-bedroom house and just
That's 5 spots.
single two without a garage, 2-car driveway, I have a hard time saying that we have to have 1 per bedroom.
I believe that there's something similar to that in our ordinance. It's like, what is it, 1 up to 3, and then 1 for the next 2 or something like that. But it is already in our ordinance under single-family residences, so I think this is they require more parking spaces than what our ordinance does just for a regular single-family residence is constructed. Because I believe it's 1 per up to 3, and then it's like, after 3, it's 1 for every 2 or something like that, so. Confirm that.
Okay.
One of the things that I was going to bring up, and maybe it's just an assumption or baby step at a time, I don't know which way you want to call it. Let's take a 2-bedroom vacation home rental. I would not expect 6 vehicles and trailers to roll up with UTVs. That's why I felt it's important that the applicant plan and have provisions for these parkings in excess of what our minimums were. So that was why I pointed it out.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm okay with the minimum. What were the changes on the max? Because I think the minimum is just I think that's a fair number myself for parking.
I think we took it out of existing ordinances. I
Yeah,
believe the committee just accepted what was written up already as being a minimum as what was in existing ordinances.
No, my only concern, I agree with the minimum, but the maximum, you said there were some changes from at the previous meeting on maximum. What were some of those changes?
We just removed it, I believe.
I think we removed it.
Thank you. That's what I was concerned about. And I think, from looking, with that removed, I'm okay with the parking ordinance. I think I think you addressed that the designated parking for guests or visitors that may visit, have a designated spot. I think you guys addressed it, so I think parking ordinance is, my eyes is good unless somebody's can change my mind.
Anyone else on the commission want to weigh in on? This went better than last time so far. Anyone from the audience want to talk about parking? All right, chair would accept the motion. And what I'm gathering is you see the way the committee wrote it is sufficient. They have the requirements of building per the county requirements. They have the minimum requirements, and there is no max, but they need to plan for additional parking of vehicles and whatnot. Did I miss something here?
No, I just wanted to, actually, it's even less than that. So for single and 2-family dwellings, you only need 2 parking spots per dwelling unit.
Right.
So it's not by bedrooms, it's by the actual dwelling unit. So you'd only need 2 spaces for a single-family residence.
Are we
Added the
clear
number
enough?
of
Do you
bedrooms.
feel we're clear enough as far as the additional parking needs and that it has to be on property?
Yes, and that's currently how it's written in the ordinance now.
Right.
That it has to be on property. They do have to show it as part of their site plan at their
Would have to
submittal.
be developed per county requirements, some gravel or something designated.
Correct. And they do show that on their site plan now, and that is part of their submittal now, currently.
Yeah.
Brittany, could you read that number again? You said what is? single
It's
family?
actually 2 spots per dwelling unit, so it isn't dependent on the number of bedrooms. So for one single-family residence, no matter the number of bedrooms that are in the residence, you need 2 parking spots.
Anyway, go ahead, Mike.
So what we're going to go for on the parking is A, C, and D, and we've eliminated B. Is that correct?
I think you're right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I make a motion to that effect.
Is there a second to the
Second.
motion? All right, it's open for discussion. I see 2 members of the committee out here. Any problems that you would want to address at this point in time in regards to them? All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think we should revise the wording on that to meet the residential structure, or whatever you want to call it, that Brittany just talked about. 2 unit or 2 parking places per residential unit. If it's a small Rapid Valley home, again, I look at that.
Yeah, we've taken out most of the references that reference one ordinance to the other and stuff, haven't we, along the way? So you can't exactly assume that. I understand what he's saying.
So under this criteria, because it's more restrictive, we would follow the more restrictive. If there was no criteria determined, we would go to what is required in our ordinance generally, which is the 2 spots per dwelling unit.
So this is more restrictive.
It is.
Okay.
Good.
I think it's good, and I think it's important. I think it's going to eliminate semis rolling up with 14 of the things sitting on there, and then they sit right alongside the neighbor's property. I see it out there. I mean, it's been a problem for some of these folks that are neighbors.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but if you have a semi coming into park, they're not going to be parking in their driveway either, so that we don't need to require 5 per residential unit.
Oh, I see the number, yeah.
I agree with C that you shouldn't have them on-street parking. It should be off-street parking. So C is good. A, I think that we should follow the requirement for residential structures of just 2 per residential structure. That fits
What does the other commissioners think about that?
That fits other county ordinances.
We don't have a motion on the floor, so I'd just like to get
I
a,
think you do have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Motion
Made a
and a
motion.
second. Mr. Chair.
oh, do we?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're in the discussion phase there.
Oh, all right.
I supported the minimum requirements for the sake that we know that they're vacation home rentals, and so I would think if you have 3 bedrooms, I think having minimum spots of 3 spots would be suffice, because from my experience, from what I've had, I do have a vacation home rental, is that, groups come and stay in a bedroom. You have couples, so I think that's required. I think then you advertise that in your advertisement that if I have a 2-bedroom, 2 cars. You have to have the space for it. So I'm okay with that minimum parking requirements myself. I think that's a safety net.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
I think knowing that planning looks at garage units as parking spots too, I think that helps. That makes more sense than saying we've got to have 5 parking spots.
Yes, go ahead, Joyce.
A couple of thoughts. I'd support leaving it as it is with 1 per bedroom. My experience in Silver City is it's very common to have multiple vehicles. You have the pickup and the trailer and the ATV. And so this at least gives the managers or owners some help. And I've had them tell me that in situations like this, if they come in with more vehicles than they have spaces supplied, that they'll tell them, you can't park on the street. That's a county ordinance, and the county is getting the back of those operators. They don't set up a controversial relationship with their guests because the county is behind them for that, and it gives them some help. I haven't heard them say that this time, but I know for a fact that they use that, and it's a plus for them. That's why they don't speak against some of these, is because it helps them in the long run. And we're very limited in Silver City with parking space. We've got some, I'm sure, that have their spaces in right away, which is probably against the ordinance. But our streets are narrow, and backing out of a garage, for example, you want a mirror that helps you because there's not enough space. So just a thought.
Thank you, Joyce. Jerry, I must have been pushing papers around when I lost track of the motion. Can you read that back so I know exactly?
Yeah, it was moved by Lewis and seconded by McGregor to approve the parking requirements it was E4, A, C, and D for special permitted uses, because the prior minutes last meeting already removed B.
Okay. So it'll be a new A, B, and C rather than A, B, C, D.
Right.
Thank you. Additional discussion.
Just one comment, Mr. Chair. I support that one. Number one is because here in the city where I live, I see residents parking in the right of way all the time. And I've got concerned citizens who complain about that time after time. I think this kind of addresses it right off the bat, so we don't have to deal with that.
Any other comments from the audience? From the commission?
So what is
Go ahead.
what is the motion exactly here?
That's what I had her read back. Go ahead and read it one more time. I got lost too. I was shuffling papers. Sorry.
Approve the parking requirements and only including in that it'd be A, C, and D.
A, C, and D.
Which is establishes a new ABC, but
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'll give you a second to go ahead and read
Okay.
what you're.
All right.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. That brings us to either density or other items. My suggestion is that I would feel more comfortable discussing density with a full commission, so we have the odd vote. So I hope Kevin understands this, but I would like to postpone that so that he's here to discuss that.
He
I
seems to
don't know
have,
what the commission's feeling is.
he seems to have strong feelings about it, so I think it's important for him to be here.
Someone make a motion to postpone until next meeting?
I would so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, postpone the discussion period and review of density as the final draft is written. Our next meeting is what date? We better have that in there.
The 22nd, May 22nd.
All right, 5/22. Discussion from the audience, from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Other items. Karen, you had one before.
Oh, I have several, but
Yes, I knew you did. I'm
on
sorry.
page 4, the liability insurance, I have a question for our legal counsel, I guess. The owner must provide a certificate of insurance indicating short-term rental coverage with Pennington County listed as a certificate holder. Are we at risk? Is Pennington County at risk in a lawsuit?
Alexa Mueller from the state's attorney's office. I can do a little bit more looking into that, but typically my understanding is that the certificate of insurance would protect us from it. I don't know what the risk exactly is. So to answer your question, I will do some more looking to provide that risk assessment.
Because if we're not liable, I think,
Why do it?
Exactly.
I don't
I've
think
questioned that. I've got that highlighted here too.
So
Do we
why?
do that with every other gas station, with every other commercial operation? Do we make them have liability insurance for the county? I don't believe so.
I don't have that answer right now. I'll do some checking into that to make sure
Yeah.
and get you a response.
thank
I
you.
want to weigh in here a little bit. We do on our contractors. We do have a number. The reason and I'll just, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the committee, we are only just a certificate holder. We're not a named insured. In other words, we're not involved with the operation. That's a lot different than a named insured. And the fact that they carry this liability falls under the county's responsibility for safety, health and safety, not just for the applicant and the owner, but for those people that are doing business in this case and bringing their families, I guess, is what the committee thought. It's not a bad idea that we know that they have the insurance. Some people operate erroneously thinking that normal household policies cover this. And I think the committee wanted to eliminate that erroneous thought. So that's all I can tell you.
So what does listed as a certificate holder mean then?
Just means that we're aware that they have that insurance.
So we don't have to rely on this person to tell us, the insurance
Yeah,
company
or
does.
me say that I have it, and here I haven't even looked to see whether they'd cover vacation home rental. You know, I just have $3 million worth of liability. Excuse me.
So is that sent into the planning department then? You keep a file on that?
Okay. Dessel, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think it also would benefit the county from a cancellation of the insurance. They would be notified of that. The county would be notified of that.
I forgot that.
If they're a
Yes, the
certificate
committee
holder.
discussed that.
Yes.
Dessel, I got to have you introduce yourself for
Oh,
the
Dessel
record.
Peterson, member of the committee.
For those that just are listening,
Right.
not seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to think a little bit more on this because I got it highlighted too. I'm going like, that's common practice to have insurance and we're at another, I want to know about the fairness some of this. Is, you know, as Kevin announced, I mean, do we make other places do this? I mean, that's my biggest concern. Are we pushing the envelope a little bit by doing that much of a requirements? Do I think it's a bad idea? No, but are we pushing a little bit? That's
Doing the right thing, sure.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Jess Ginger as part of the committee. I think we're overthinking the insurance thing. The point for the committee was to make sure that these operators had the short-term renters insurance, because if they're carrying just a homeowner's policy, the house burns down the neighbor's house, that insurance policy is not valid. So it's not about how much liability they have to carry for themselves, it's that they have the short-term renter policy. They can carry, I think, so I operate 6 vacation rentals. I have short-term renters policies. They come with like $1 million liability standard. I increase it because of the number of properties that I have. But it's not about insuring the county. It's not about enforcing them to have this amount of liability. It's having the right coverage for the business that they're operating.
See, I understand that because I carry an umbrella.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I carry an
Yeah,
umbrella,
so I have my
which,
short-term renter policy on the dwelling, and then I also carry a commercial umbrella by my choice.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you can enforce that on people, but I think you can enforce having the proper insurance for the business that you're operating.
Oh.
That was kind of the,
Go ahead.
So who are you protecting?
for,
What, this liability insurance is protecting whom?
well, the short-term rental is protecting the dwelling, it's protecting the surrounding areas. If something happens, it's protecting the guests that stay there. It's protecting your neighborhood. Now, the commercial umbrella liability, it's protecting me as an operator.
Well, I mean, if you have a fire, how does it protect the guest? I mean, it protects the person who owns the
It's more,
property, but,
well, so maybe not so much the guests, but it's protecting the property, it's protecting the surrounding properties.
well, maybe the surrounding properties. I'm thinking, I don't think we're obligated to get the vacation home rental person to protect himself and his dwelling and his business.
Well, he's probably some
I mean, he
people,
would normally, anybody with a,
no, actually,
you
a
know.
lot of people that operate these, and I learned this the hard way too, 10 years ago when I got into this. I thought a homeowner's policy covered me because I have other long-term rentals. And then I found out I'm not adequately covered because I didn't know I had to have this short-term specific
So this is
policy.
sort of a public service we're providing for the vacation
Yeah.
home rental person. Yeah,
It's kind of a protection for everybody, really.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So,
the question is, are we obligated to do that?
It seems to me like we're babysitting
Yeah.
owners.
I mean, it's sensible and it's a thoughtful thing to include in case somebody who's not familiar with a business operation would get into it. And you're right, I'm sure that you got to have the right policy because it's a commercial enterprise, at least as far as the insurance companies are concerned. But
I'm going to weigh in for a second. Jess, just in case you don't know, is the one that's been, she
on the
follows
TV.
me, she follows this thing 100%, so I want you all to know that as commissioner. So this isn't her first rodeo for listening to what we've got for comments, and she does a good job handling them. So go ahead.
My only comment is I'll research, because I'm going through all our insurances right now. We're actively redoing all ours. So with long-term rentals up to our home insurance to the one, so that's something I'm gonna want to check on. Just get a little more feedback what the difference, I get what you're saying, the difference between regular home insurance and mortgage insurance, because you got to carry that type of stuff. But I want to find out what's the difference and why. And I know some will come, it does make a difference, but I do have long-term rentals and pay the insurance on those too, but I'm not required on those to show them to the city or anybody else, but.
To address what Jim and Kevin were saying, though, the issue of liability can go both directions. So I don't think we're just protecting the operator. If the operator had guests that cause liability situations upon neighbors, then the neighbor has a place to go and pursue compensation for that if this was in place as well. So it's not a one-way street in the case of liability, I don't believe. Go ahead.
Jessica Peterson again. I think one of the concerns we had was the renters who come, that there's insurance covering them. If they have an access to get money if they're injured somehow on the property. And then some people may be judgment proof because they don't have any assets. Some owner might be judgment proof. But in this case, it would protect the users as well. That was my thinking at the time.
I would look at this as standards. This is a standard, just like the size of the septic tank, the health department, the different things. This is a standard, and it's there for a reason. I know we're not trying to babysit everybody too, but by the same token, I think people that are renting or doing this by the night have a better feeling to know that they're covered, that there's a standard there. That's the way I look at it.
They have an option to purchase additional insurance, the renters do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That is one of the options when they book them.
And I don't have any problem, telling them when they get their insurance, to make sure that they have their insurance, but I just don't see why Pennington County is named as a certificate holder.
Anybody care to make a motion? I don't think we have a motion this time.
I'm going to wait for more information, I think.
Yeah.
All right. You'd have to postpone this to the same date, the next meeting or the meeting following.
Charlie, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Once we talk about density at the next meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should it would make sense to maybe just start at the beginning and go item through, so that when we're done with a
Announce the
page, we're
final
done.
results. That's a good idea.
And then we can know that we're done or nearly done, or,
And
but I
we've
think
got
that,
more from you though too today, right? For
well,
others?
maybe. Local contacts, the item 6 on page 2, that be reachable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the comment was made on that several meetings ago, that in the Black Hills, you can't always be reached 24 hours a day if you're out doing something else. So um, that maybe that standard's a little too strong, but maybe not. I don't know.
It looks good.
Yeah, it looks good, but. And then the final thing, well, it's probably not the final thing, but the one thing I noticed on page 5, the interior signage. Wow, that's a long list. I think the last 4 items, maybe we need to look at it, or do they need to be on there? Like a statement that guests are expected to be courteous to all neighbors and to respect property boundaries. I would hope they don't need to be told that.
Well, yeah, they probably don't, but because Airbnb will tell them that repeatedly.
That's already in the ordinance.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
That whole list is already in the ordinance?
Sure.
Not a big deal, it's like you're
Okay, that
Yeah.
just seemed like a really long
No,
list.
it's not that big of a deal. In fact, the one we just did, they had a nice little plaque where it was written that these are the rules.
Okay,
You see it in any motel room, if you read the back of the door.
Yeah.
And Jess, whenever you reply, you gotta come. You broke the rules, but we're gonna let you off.
all right.
That was Jess that replied that is in the existing ordinance.
Okay.
And it is part of the special use permit, and it would be part of the conditional use permit as well.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Any motions you want to do out of?
think it would
The
be nice
others?
to go home at noon.
All right.
Gonna get out.
Well, well, but I want everybody, is anybody else got any that fit to others?
If we're talking about everything else in here.
Yes.
Item 10, who's going to review that safety plan?
Okay.
Because it kind of just says, there's severe weather, thunderstorms, hail, lightning, yada, yada, yada. Who's going to make sure that they get their blessing on that?
Okay. Anyone else has got another item?
Number 11, one more thing. I'm actually more conservative on this one. You may think that I'm a liberal on all these things, but number 11, the people that, my experience after hundreds of guests, I would rather have the quiet hours from 9 o'clock at night till 9 o'clock in the morning. Most people that come into Airbnbs are vacationing the hills.
Yeah.
They come in, they're shot, they go to bed, and they're sleeping. And if you want the party crowd, then you just do something else other than an Airbnb. And some of them come in late the night before, and they sleep and don't get out of there till checkout time at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So I would support shorten or actually lengthening that rather than 10 o'clock at night, because most of them are sleeping by then. 9 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the morning, so that in that morning time when they are sleeping in, they've got quiet hours. There may be objections to other people, but that's how my people do it.
I think on this, I think this follows regular standard. The 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. for law enforcement. I think that's why they have it.
Just tighter than that.
I totally understand most of the people are, but I think it should be just a standard one. I think
For the commission, Karen's been nailing it today, and if you would do the chair would sure address a motion that covers one final presentation of all the reviewed items and their, what do you call it, for lack of a better term, clearance, how we clarified the item or cleared the question. And after the final conversation on density, I think that's a good idea, and I think we ought to put it down in the motion that we're going to do that before we then finally get into the new wordings and whatever the planning department on the final draft. I liked that idea. Does anyone else? If you'd put that as motion, maybe we could get a second for it, and then that way the public can look at one format. I agree with you, to see what we decided on these miscellaneous items, and we could include those there's 5 that have just been added: the liability insurance, the local contacts, the interior siding, the safety, and the hours. To make sure that then the public that attended these meetings and came out have some idea what we finally came up with in the way of discussion items.
Mr. Chair, I would move that after discussion of density and the other items you just brought up, that we go through the proposed ordinance, starting at page 1, and just basically approve each section, make any changes necessary, so that planning and zoning can create a new copy for us.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. For discussion, is that something that could be done then? All right. From the planning department, does everybody understand the motion? We would go ahead and list the actions taken by the commission on these items. We then would review, as I understand your motion, the final draft with the wording and whatnot in place. Now, is that something that can how long will it take for the things we've already accomplished to change the wording or deal with it? They don't look major to me. Go ahead.
No, so we can put the motions that have been done to date. We just didn't want to have this draft,
Yeah.
depending on how many meetings. Then there's so many drafts floating around, and then the public doesn't know which draft is actually being worked on.
Can you highlight them? So that
Yes.
we, as we come across them in the review, that we pay particular attention to that?
Right, so what I can do for the next meeting is put the current motions, so that'll be a new draft, it'll have a new date, and then work off of that one, and then once you make your final decisions and the final, after you've gone through all of them, we'll do one final change, and then you would review that and then make that motion to make that recommendation to the board. So then that way there isn't so the public knows what's going to the board. That's the biggest thing, is when you have all of these changes and all of these different draft documents, knowing which one is actually the one that's, moving forward. And
All right. Question for Brittany on that one. Does everybody understand what you said in regards to the motion on the table? Go ahead.
Isn't that how we did the rock ordinance or the mining
Yes.
ordinance?
Yes.
We just, yeah, it seemed to work well.
I especially like the highlighting, to re-alert us that this is important, this is what we came to after heated discussion.
so what I will probably do is make those highlighted changes of the motions that are to date. So when I upload and when the public has access to this new ordinance, they know they can, the changes are very clear.
Okay. Thank you, Brittany. Any discussion from the audience, the public, on that? Everybody understand the motion? Does everybody understand the motion that's on the commission? Hearing no other words, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're off of that until we get our wording back, which I assume can be the next meeting, hopefully. If not, you'll let us know. Okay?
We need a motion to continue also the ordinance amendment?
Oh, yes, we need to continue the ordinance amendment. Thank you, Jerry. We do need to continue the ordinance amendment review for next meeting.
I move that we continue ordinance amendment OA 2301 to the next meeting, whatever that date
5/22.
is.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue the ordinance review to the next meeting, 5/22. Discussion from the public. Discussion from the commission. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're on to item number 22.
Item 22 is the county board report. The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendations from the April 24th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Items from the public. It's not often we have public left that's willing to tolerate us. All right, no items from staff. Building report.
So just with the building permit report, we are starting to see numbers go back up. So we're catching up to the 2022 numbers. So we're seeing more construction. So mostly in the hospitality area within the single-family residences. There have been a lot of specialty resorts and recreational resorts, and we're starting to see those building permits come in for those properties, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Before we put the adjourn, I won't be wordy. One, it's been difficult, but you guys have done a wonderful job on reviewing the items. Density's going to be tough. It was tough for the committee. As I said and have spoken to most of you, density, I believe, was discussed almost at every meeting other than the first two or three. It's a very, very broad topic. And so I compliment you how well you've done. And this committee, I get in trouble when I say it, but this committee did a good job too in what they put before us, because we haven't had to review too many items, and the ones we did are pretty shaky. You know, they're up and down as far as our tax-paying population. So, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're adjourned.
That in there. I remember seeing the original draft.